This is Rick Hackett staff. We are recording. You may begin.
Thanks, Rick. All right, the November 18th meeting of the Boulder County Planning Commission will now come to order. Thank you all for attending. A few announcements first before we get into the meeting. Due to COVID-19 concerns, this meeting is being held virtually. Information on how to participate in the virtual meeting has been posted to the Planning Commission webpage. That webpage is at www.boco.org/PC. There's also a phone number listed on that site for those who wish to call in and not use the webcast, or if you don't have power, as I hear some of our constituents don't right now. That phone number is on the website, but if anybody wants to write it down, I'll state that right now. The phone number to call in is 1-669-254-5252, and the webinar ID that you'll enter after you call in is 161-329-9862. And we're going to have staff post that to the chat in the Zoom meeting as well, so you can see that if you didn't write that all down. We're going to start off with a roll call of the commissioners that are here. So if you can just please state present if I call your name, that'd be great. Mark Bloomfield.
Present.
Thanks, Mark. Sam Fitch.
Present.
Ann Goldfarb is absent. Sam Libby, present. Gavin McMillan.
Present.
Dan Hilton.
Present.
Todd Quigley is also absent. Melanie Neske.
Present.
And Leishan Gargano is absent as well. Okay, thank you all. As a reminder to the commissioners, please identify yourself when you're speaking and speak slowly and clearly. All of our votes are going to be roll call votes. Let's keep our videos on if possible during the hearing. Please remain on mute before you speak. When you begin speaking, identify yourself as a planning commissioner, and then it may help to keep the participant list open so you can see who's speaking in the Zoom meeting. Our first item of the agenda is going to be the approval of minutes from the last meeting on October 21st. Are there any comments, questions, or a motion?
Commissioner Bloomfield, I move that we approve the meetings from the October meeting. Did I say meetings? Minutes from the October meeting.
This is Commissioner Neske. I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? We'll do a vote. Just as I see you on the screen, Melanie Neske.
Aye.
Sam Libby, aye. Sam Fitch.
Aye.
Gavin.
Aye.
Mark. And Dan.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. Okay, with that approval, next would be staff updates. Are there any staff updates to share?
There are not, Commissioner Libby.
Okay, thank you. Today we have two items on the agenda. There was a third, which is a docket about the Boulder Sudbury School that's been tabled indefinitely. So we have two items for the meeting today. I'll stop now just to explain the public hearing process briefly for those on the phone or in the meeting. There will be an opportunity to provide public comment on the items that we've specified that we will take public testimony on during the public hearing portion of each item. The order of presentation will be, first we'll hear from the staff presentation. The applicant may speak and present if they wish, and then we'll move on to accepting public comment from any individuals in the meeting who would like to speak. Some of you may have signed up in advance. We'll go through those names first. We have a list of those folks. And if you have not signed up, you can sign up either by putting your name and address in the chat with the docket number that you'd like to speak to, or at the time we'll ask for people who are interested in speaking. Please direct your comments to the board, or to the Planning Commission rather. The chair will direct any questions that arise to the appropriate parties if appropriate. And then once we've heard all of the appropriate testimony, we'll be closing that hearing, and the Planning Commission will then discuss and vote to take an action. If anybody who's speaking, you'll have 3 minutes per individual. If you've pooled time, you can pool up to 3 people together for a maximum of 10 minutes together. You'll all have to be in attendance and provide your name and address to take advantage of that pooling. And as there are a couple reminders for the public, please do not submit comments or questions in the chat box during the meeting. The chat box is only for you to provide your name, address, and the docket number you'd like to speak for. Staff will also share feedback and information there that may be useful to you. When you are speaking, please remain on mute until your name is called on, and we'll be promoting people to the presenter or panelist spot so they can speak when it's appropriate. There's no chance for the public to share their screens. And the applicants are welcome to share a presentation. Please have it ready if you'd like to present at that time. Again, you'll be after the staff presentation. With that, I'm going to open the public hearing. This is going to be starting off with docket V-20-0006, the Harrison vacation. We'll now hear from staff. I think it's Ryan, and move on to comments and discussion. Do we have Ryan?
You do. Hi, Commissioners. Ryan Kasarek, Community Planning and Permitting staff. Let me share the screen of the presentation here for V-20-006. Go ahead and let me know if you are able to see the screen.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So this is a Planning Commission meeting for November 18, 2020 for V-20-0006 Harrison Vacation at 0 North 95th Street. So here's our vicinity map getting us started off on where we're located at. Here's 95th Street. Here's Lookout Road, just northwest of Erie and Town of Lafayette. The owner and applicants, Craig and Nicole Harrison. Mark Painter is the agent. This parcel is zoned agricultural. The parcel history here, this has gone through an NUPUD planning process in order to create Outlot A, which is the lot we're talking about today. There's also kind of in conjunction to this, or definitely worth of note, 2 residences built within the same Block 3 area on lots 2 and lot 3, which is the lots just south of Outlot A. This is the farm in Boulder Valley, replat of Block 3. The acreage for Outlot A is 4.36 acres. Request today is to vacate a platted access easement on Outlot A of Block 3, the farm in Boulder Valley NUPUD, which provides access to lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Block 3. Now there's an additional request that's not in the purview of this meeting for an exemption plat process, EP 20-0006, which looks to plat an access easement 20 feet wide to provide access across outlots A to lots 2, 3, and 4 of Block 3. So here we are. Here's the aerial of the region. Of note, we can see here's Outlot A outlined in red. This is lot 2, and this is lot 3, as I discussed before. You can see this is the Boulder Valley farm. There's, at one point in time, it was a much larger subdivision process out here. Much of this land is owned by the city of Boulder, as we'll see in just a second, and is no longer subject to being subdivided. Zooming in a little bit further so we can get a little bit of a better view. The Harrisons, the applicants today, they own lot 1, lot 2, and Outlot A. And then their next door neighbors, the Williamses, own lot 3 and lot 4. Here's our public lands map. So farm in Boulder Valley, NUPUD. Much of this land is either sits in conservation easements or is owned by either the county or open space and mountain parks through the city of Boulder. Here's our comprehensive plan layers. There's some ag lands of national importance south of the area that we're looking at today, some other mapped environmental features as well in the general area. So looking at our existing conditions, and I circled in red that Block 3 area. This is the area that we'll be talking about. This is the larger farm in Boulder Valley NUPUD plat. Zooming in a little bit further into our existing conditions, we can see those lots that I just talked about on that aerial, this being lot 1, lot 2, 3, 4, and then this being Outlot A here. So outlined in red in all sorts of colors, hopefully to make this a little bit easier to kind of read through and see. In pink, this is Outlot R. This is Outlot Q in kind of a purplish color. Outlined in green is the 60-foot access easement we're talking about today that is proposed to be vacated. Outlined in red is Outlot A, and then this is lot 1. This is lot 2, 3, and 4. The applicants own lot 1, 2, and outlot A. In the staff report, and I want to touch on this briefly here on this slide, staff made the comment that, and included in the staff report, that there's 60-foot access easement on outlot A, which is outlined in green, was originally platted to connect to a 60-foot access easement on outlot Q through outlot A. So outlot Q through A to connect to an access easement on outlot R. That's not completely correct, and so I want to correct that here. Outlots Q and R are platted outlots for access in the management responsibility of Boulder Valley Farm, which is the city of Boulder. They're not easements, nor do they reflect use for future subdivisions other than an emergency access connection. So a road maintenance agreement conveys legal access, actually conveys those legal access rights over outlot R, the one in pink, to lots 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I wanted to correct that there. This plat, the farm in Boulder Valley on UPD, was filed in October 1992. It included on there the filing of and created outlot A of block 3, which is what we're talking about today, as a parcel that was subject to a 60-foot access easement. So the result of that platting is that there's a 60-foot access easement dedicated to Boulder County that runs over and across outlot A. In order for them to access the access easement, or for it to be accessed, there's a maintenance agreement that allows for these lots to access across outlot R to get to outlot A and ultimately to their lots. Neither Boulder County nor the public has any right to use the driveway on outlet R to get to the access easements across outlot A, because then UPUD was never developed as originally intended. As we looked at it, see that there was a much larger subdivision that was thought out a while ago that's no longer in the plans. There's really no need for 2 separate accesses to get back here using both of these as some sort of loop. The plat says that the establishment of the access easement here is dedicated for the purposes shown. The stated purposes of the 60-foot access easement is to provide access. Doesn't include the right to place utilities within the easement area. There currently are utilities within outlot A that serve both the Williams's lots over here on lot 3 and 4 and the Harrison's lots on 1 and 2. And it may well be that utility companies want easements for facilities across outlet A, but that would be something that is an issue that would need to be talked through between the utility providers and the owners of the lots in this area. So let's go to what is proposed, and I called out the ownership names on here in black just for kind of ease to look at. Here's outlot A outlined here in this kind of skinnier line with light coloring. It's a 60-foot access easement shown in the plat running on outlot A. The proposal is to vacate that. Now, as we talked about earlier, there's an exemption plat, EP 20006, that will look to plat a 20-foot access easement that goes over the current existing road out there. So when we looked at that aerial image, we could see the driveway, which is shown here, that was out there, providing access to lot 3, which is where a residence is built, and lot 2, where a residence is built. The EP would allow for that to continue to be in place, but like we're talking about today, we're looking at vacating the entirety of the 60-foot access easement, which runs roughly along the southern boundary of outlot A, shown here just to the north of these lots. So here's some site photos from out there. Standing in the undeveloped area of outlot A as I take these pictures. These 3 photos kind of strung together are a east to south view. This is a western view within outlot A, kind of looking at the easement area roughly where it is. This is then on that existing driveway for the easement as well, as it kind of pertains to outlot A and where we're located at with that. We referred this application out. Chief building official had no conflicts. Our development review team engineering group supports a proposal. Left Hand Water did cite concerns with vacating right-of-way for other outlots, which isn't being proposed, but that they were had concerns that they would not be able to service hydrants because of this. The conservation easement folks here with Boulder County responded with no conflicts, as the proposed is consistent with the terms of the conservation easement. Outlot A is encumbered by a conservation easement. This application does not conflict with those terms of the conservation easement, and received a number of no comments from other groups with the county and with the city of Boulder. Did receive a comment from the Fire Protection District with concerns that the bridge used the property wouldn't be supportive of fire truck, and also with the concern that secondary access for fire wouldn't be available. And then I also want to note the Public Service Company of Colorado provided a referral asking that an easement be granted for the existing utilities that exist out in Outlot A as well. With the referrals, we also sent out notification for public comment. We received 17 comments originally for this that were against the project. 2 of them were for and 3 were neutral. Since the staff recommendation posting, 5 of those comment providers that were against have made statements that they're no longer objecting. Comments against included a petition signed by 20 neighbors, which also had members remove themselves from after the posting the staff recommendation. The petition and the 14 comments against raised concerns that the vacation will result in a new access being developed, that the vacation may result in the integrity of open space being compromised, that new development, like a subdivision or something like that, could occur, that the trees along the access easement will be killed because of this, or that the neighborhood to the north will be impacted visually largely by concerns raised with all of these things. I also received concerns from the next door neighbor about the ability of the neighbor to care for their land in Outlot A. They have concerns that vacating the easement will get rid of the ability to get utilities to their lot and Lot 4, so Lot 3 and Lot 4. And then concerns that an ability for road to cross all of Outlot A is being taken away, and that if the city ever had an intention to build a road out in that area, it would have to go through the lot north of Outlot A, which is Outlot Q. A letter from the next door neighbor also expressed concerns about utility access and the ability to develop lots 3 and 4 with concerns that they would not be able to access utilities to do that. The concerns that changing access to Outlot A would privatize Outlot A, and that unaddressed contingencies for development, i.e. provision of utilities and provisions for access to those lots are not being addressed because of the vacation. So looking at vacation criteria, 10-100A, public roads, alleys, and easements may be vacated after consideration of public hearing by both the Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners. We're here 10-100B, unless otherwise noted, the portions of the road or alley vacated will be divided down the center line and added to the respective adjacent property. For this one, the applicant's proposing to plat a new easement for Outlot A through that exemption plat that we talked about, with the rest of the area not in the easement going to Outlot A, to sort of suffice to criteria B. C, application processing requirements for vacations are included. This meets those. We're here at a Planning Commission hearing, and thereafter we'll go to Board of County Commissioners hearing, where public testimony can be taken, and this meets the processing requirements for that. Following approval or conditional approval of vacation, the applicant should submit to the Land Use Department all necessary documents. The applicant has done that, and then we can see finally vacation becomes effective upon recordation of the board's resolution of approval at the Boulder County Clerk and Recorder. They need to follow the steps listed here. So with all that, the recommendation is Community Planning and Permitting staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend conditional approval for the vacation portion of the docket B20-006, Harrison vacation, subject to the conditions listed in the staff recommendation. Those being the platted access easement shown in the application materials is vacated subject to conditional approval by the Board of County Commissioners in the exemption plat application EP 20006, which is request to plat a new access easement providing access to lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Block 3 of the Farm in Boulder Valley NUPUD. Also, the applicant should meet all post-approval requirements within 1 year of the date of the commissioner hearing approving the vacation. This resolution and associated documents should be recorded with the county clerk and recorder within 1 year. And then that the applicant should be subject to terms and conditions, commitments of record in the file for docket V20006 Harrison vacation. And with that, that's staff's concludes staff's presentation for this docket.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Any questions from the commissioners before the applicant presentation?
This is Commissioner Neske. I had one question on the last slide you were speaking about when you were talking of the concerns of the next door neighbor. Is that the Williams that was on the plat?
Yes,
They're
it is.
directly next to it? Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Fitch. Brian, I have a question. Somewhere in the packet, it talks about the historic uses of Outlot A. And my question is, what are those historic uses? And how will those be affected or not by going from a 60-foot easement to a 20-foot easement?
Sure. So Outlot A is been undeveloped aside from that existing access easement that we, or the existing, not access easement's the wrong word. The existing driveway that we had seen there, we saw it in the photos and we could see in the aerial. That is the extent of development that's happened on Outlot A. Otherwise, it's sat undeveloped and largely as it is now.
So it's not used for agriculture or anything?
No, there's no really, it's open space.
Okay.
That's basically it.
I have other questions, but I'll hold them till after the applicant makes their presentation.
Commissioner
Libby.
Bloomfield.
Oh, sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Ryan, I'm wondering, just to sum up, if just to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, it seems like they're essentially reducing the access easement from 60 feet wide to what's drawn in the drawings. And am I correct in thinking that for lot 1, since the applicant owns both lots, if they were to sell lot 1, they would grant an access easement to that at that time, so that's not needed right now?
Yeah, in the event that something like that were to occur or be proposed, and want to emphasize that that's not happening or being proposed with this application currently, but if it were to happen, yes, they would need to provide some access easement or form of access to get to that lot.
Okay, and so my understanding from this and from the staff packet is that we're not actually changing anything in terms of utility access. We're just talking about changing the size of the access easement.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
This is Commissioner Libby. The left-hand fire district raised a question about the bridge weight and access. I assume that's on the main driveway. As far as I can tell, Ryan, this doesn't really have any effect on that because they would not be accessing through this easement. There's no road anyways. It's just a general concern that is actually not really relevant here. Is that right?
Largely, yes. There's no, it's the concern put forward by the fire protection district was to the existing bridge that is needed to cross the ditch to get to these lots that follows along the access that we're looking at today. It's not, we don't have any kind of recommendations or anything like that because there's no physical improvements occurring. to tie that to with that, but their concern would be just for the existing infrastructure that's out
Right.
there, that's been servicing the homes.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Fitch again. But I read the letter from Left Hand Fire District as saying that the primary access is through the loop, including the section, so that goes across the irrigation ditch to the point where the driveway for the Williams goes off to the left or to the south. Then it continues. So there's a question about primary access to both houses if that bridge isn't sufficient to carry the heavier fire trucks. What's the emergency access?
Yes, so the bridge is located maybe I'll show my screen for that here. The bridge is located on Outlot R, so not on what we're talking about here today. So let me share my screen. I'm bad at talking and sharing screens at the same time. So are we looking at a picture of the with all the colors outlined?
Yes.
Yes, so and we actually can see the ditch here. So that's occurring on Outlot R, and that's to talk about that existing bridge that's there on Outlot R, not a bridge on Outlot A. So that's one of those concerns were brought up and have been passed along to the applicant. We don't have any recommendations for work that needs to be done on Outlot R in this from us.
But I guess my point is that bridge on the purple section is prior to reaching either of the two existing residences.
Commissioner Libby, Sam, what I understand from that is basically that it's already a condition that is of concern, and the proposed vacation basically has no impact or improvement or degradation of that condition. So I think what I heard was that it's not appropriate to condition approval on anything related to that bridge.
Yes, that's staff's perspective, because we're not looking at anything we're not looking at a proposal for Outlot R. We're looking at Outlot A.
And so I guess the last question in this section is, in the section that's in blue, which is Outlot Q, what's the current state of that? Is that a dirt road? Is that just fields? Or is there something there? Is that potentially a secondary access?
Yeah, so it's a field.
Okay, but there's no road there at present.
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, is the applicant here to make a presentation?
Yes, we are. Can you mute yourself? Okay.
We're still getting pretty good feedback.
Is that better?
Yes, it is. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Sorry about that. Yes, we are here and we'd like to make a presentation at this time.
Okay, let's do it.
Thank you. I'd like to start by just thanking Ryan and all of the staff, as well as all of the commissioners, for your time today. And I'm sorry, my video is not on. Turn that on. We want to thank you all for your time and consideration today. I'm Jordan Bunch, and together with my colleague Mark Painter, we're both of Holland and Hart. We represent Nicole and Craig Harrison, who are the applicants. They are also both on this call today, and I'd like to take this moment to briefly introduce both of them. And I'd like to share my screen. Just give me a moment. All right. Are you seeing, is my screen being shared? Okay, great. So where we'd like to start today to follow up on Ryan's presentation is to give you a little bit more background on why we're asking for this vacation and what reasons kind of led to this point. And I'd like to this time hand that over to Nicole Harrison to walk you all through those reasons. Nicole, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Jordan. Good afternoon, and thank you, Planning Commission and staff, for your time and attention. My name is Nicole Harrison. My husband is Craig Harrison. Our son, Wyatt, who is 10, our daughter, Birdie, who is 7, and I all live at the property we are talking about today. What we are asking for is simple: a vacation of a dated access easement. The part we are talking about that Ryan pointed out earlier, actually, we have on a slide outlined in turquoise. Our ask is for the right-of-way to be terminated completely above lots 1 and 2, which are in purple and yellow and are owned by us, and then a reduced easement width from 60 feet down to 20 feet above lots 3 and 4 in orange and black. This request will not impair any access. I want to make that really clear. The reason we're doing this is it improves safety. All of Boulder Valley Farms traffic currently dead ends at the front door of our house, which I show here in picture B, which is kind of at the top. That's where we park our cars, that's where our home is, that's where our children play. This also will help protect our family. No road maintenance agreement exists on Outlot A. So we are 100% responsible for the snow removal, the grading, and road repairs. Furthermore, this vacation reduces potential liability on Outlot A that we need to personally insure for. Next slide. Also, this ensures no road will be developed above lots 1 and 2. No road currently exists. Both lots are owned by us, and no ingress or egress is necessary for anyone else. And the non-existent road would dead end into the city of Boulder's property, unable to connect to any other road. And this is what I'm showing in picture C. This is where the road is proposed to be, but there is no road there. Also, this protects the mature landscape. It ensures vehicles will only drive on the existing driveway and makes certain no vehicles or equipment can be parked on the existing landscape. And it also protects against trees being removed for additional access. And that's what I'm showing in picture A. That's where the driveway is split and Outlot A continues. And you can see the mature trees on either side of the roadway. Okay, next slide, please. This also helps Boulder correct an outdated plat map. It corrects for the fact that 58 homes were never developed on Boulder Valley Farms and can never be developed. This also helps with consistency. Our vacation is consistent with the City of Boulder's current access agreement through Boulder Valley Farms. Lot 1 through 4 are limited to 16 feet of total access through Boulder Valley Farms. And in picture A, I want to show that access would be limited to the current driveway with a shoulder on either side for a total of 20 feet. Boulder permits us to have 16 feet through Boulder Valley Farms, and we are proposing the county standard of 20 feet. And lastly, I just want to say we love living here. We're so happy and feel very fortunate to be living here, but this isn't an abstract ask to us. There have been many times that my husband has been traveling and I've been here alone at the house with the kids, and people were on Outlot A in a way that made me feel uncomfortable, and I questioned staying here with my kids. We're in a very remote area, and although wonderful, you can also feel very vulnerable at times. So having this open to the public makes us feel very vulnerable, and that's why it is important to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. I'd like to take you all now through a few more visuals to give a little bit of context to what Ryan and Nicole have talked about so far. This is, as you'll see, is very similar to the graphic that Ryan showed earlier. We have the 2 lots owned by the Harrisons, 2 owned by the Williams, and out lot A. The purple highlight here is the full 60-foot access easement as it currently exists. And what we are proposing is essentially this. The west half of the access easement would be vacated in its entirety, and this eastern part, still highlighted in purple, will ultimately remain through the exemption plat process, but be reduced from 60 feet to 20 feet with the existing access drives remaining in place. This is a close-up of a shot that I think you've seen a couple times now, but I think gives some good context to what we're asking for. So this is Outlot A as it currently exists, and this is the road that's used by the Williams and the Harrisons to get to their property. It is, as Nicole noted, 16 feet in width, and we are proposing that it be, that the access easement be 20 feet wide. So the road would exist as it currently is with a 2-foot shoulder on either side. But the access easement in its current state is actually 60 feet in width. So it would technically allow the road to be expanded an additional 20 feet on either side. As you can tell, would take out a number of trees and natural vegetation existing currently on the land. So through this vacation and exemption plat process, we would reduce the road to exactly as it is now, which is used by everyone, sufficient for their use, and even allow buffers, but it would prevent future development that would have a negative impact on Outlot A and would change the look of Outlot A substantially. This would keep it exactly as it currently exists. This is another shot similar to what Ryan showed you earlier. This is that western half of Outlot A, where we're proposing the easement be vacated entirely and not replaced. And as you can see, there is no road there currently. This is natural grasses. So by vacating the easement, it will ensure that this stays in its natural place and no road is developed in what is now a completely undeveloped property. And again, to give you some orientation here, the Harrison's home is right here. And this is Outlot A. And the easement as it currently exists dead ends here in the middle of essentially nowhere. This is owned by City of Boulder Open Space. And there's no need for the public to get to this point. They couldn't go any further in any other direction. And there's simply no need for them to be on Outlot A. And the easement serves no current purpose. And one last visual at the risk of beating a dead horse here. This is the road as it currently exists. You can see it comes in off of Outlot A and curls right in front of the Harrison's home. This is the access easement that we are proposing be vacated and not replaced. This part here. You see there's nothing here, there's no need, there's no benefit to the public having this access easement. The only thing that can currently be used for is to allow members of the public to come right up to the Harrison's front door. So with that, I want to take this opportunity to share a little bit more facts about this vacation and address some of the misconceptions that I think exist out there. As Ryan noted, there was a lot of public response to this application, but it's clear when you read the comments that many of those are based off of an inaccurate representation about what this application is doing and what the purpose of it is. Firstly, there's a misconception that this will lead to additional development. And that's not true. It's actually the opposite. New development is anathema to the Harrisons. It has been their goal from the beginning to limit future development on their property. Outlot A, as Ryan noted, is subject to a conservation easement. And that conservation easement prohibits all residential development, and it prohibits any other type of development that's not related to agriculture. And as Ryan noted, it's not used for that currently, it's just open space. The Harrisons purchased Lot 1 specifically to ensure that no one built on it, and they've actually reached out to the county about placing a conservation easement on Lot 1. And all of this property is surrounded by land that's owned by City of Boulder Open Space. And as I'm sure you are all well aware, the City of Boulder Open Space has exacting standards for allowing any type of development across open space land, including roads and utilities, anything. I know Bethany Collins is attending this meeting virtually today from the City of Boulder. I'm sure she can answer any questions you may have about those standards, but suffice to say, they are exacting, and it's next to impossible that anything would be developed on these properties. So that all comes back to the fact that this is being done just to ensure that there's no future development, we clean up an obsolete easement, and we enhance the safety and security of the Harrisons. Now, it would be disingenuous of me to not acknowledge that there have been disputes between the Harrisons and the Williams. But I want to be clear that that is not the reason why this application was submitted. The Harrisons have had this goal since day one. As I mentioned, they bought these properties with the idea of conserving them and not changing the look, not allowing future development. And they in fact started down this path in concert with the Williams. The disputes that have arisen along the way have certainly underscored the need to continue with this process, but it's not the reason why we are doing this. They would have been doing this regardless of who their neighbors were. This is an important safety issue for them. It's important to clean up an unnecessary easement, and it helps preserve the property. And to that end, one of the other misconceptions that seems to be out there is that this will negatively impact the neighboring properties. And that's simply not true. The easement that we are talking about vacating is an access easement only. It only provides for ingress and egress, nothing else. And as Ryan noted earlier, somewhat surprisingly, I think you would all agree, several neighbors who originally objected to this application have since either withdrawn their support or changed to actively supporting it. I'm sorry, withdrawn their opposition or changed to actively supporting it once they learned what the facts were. This is not going to allow future development, and it's not going to change the look of Outlot A. In fact, just the opposite. By narrowing the road to what's there, it will ensure that the trees and the surrounding native land is not going to be cut down and is not going to be developed. It's going to be preserved pursuant to that conservation easement. And the trees are also native and mature. They don't require active irrigation. And as Nicole noted earlier, even if they did, that is not related to the access easement. That easement is for access only. It does not provide any other rights to anyone else. It is the Harrison's lot, and maintenance is their responsibility subject to the conservation easement. And finally, there were a number of long letters in staff's packet for the meeting today related to private utility disputes. And I just want to be clear that those are not relevant to this application. This is about access only. And as you've now heard ad nauseum, the access will not change. The driveways are going to remain the same. The road as exists is going to remain the same. The only thing that's going to happen is by narrowing it, we assure that it's not widened to negatively impact the trees, or more drive aisles aren't added that would cut through and destroy natural fauna in the area. The existing access remains the same. Those private utility disputes should be worked out through alternative dispute resolution processes. Those are not the type of disputes that the government gets involved in. There's other processes for that. Instead, the code has laid out what the factors are that this commission should consider in determining this vacation, and those all weigh in favor of approving this vacation. One of the factors in favor of approving a vacation is if it's necessary for access or to clear title to land. And that's exactly what we have here. This easement was platted at a time when the developer thought that this would be a major subdivision. That's not the case. That access easement dead ends to nowhere, it doesn't connect to any roads, and it doesn't serve any purpose. It's obsolete and unnecessary. And the factors in the code that weigh in favor of rejecting a vacation request aren't present here. The code says that a vacation should be disfavored if it facilitates new or unsafe development. And the opposite is true here. This vacation would ensure that there is no new development. It doesn't facilitate anything new and guards against future development. And the other factor that would weigh in favor of rejecting a vacation request is if it prevents access to county-owned lands. And that's just not the case here. This doesn't lead to county-owned lands. It leads to a property owned by the city of Boulder and private property. There's no, this doesn't in any way prevent the county from reaching its own property. So based on those factors and the facts that are on the ground, we would request that you recommend to the county commission that they approve this vacation request. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant from the commissioners?
Yes, this is Commissioner Fitch again. Jordan, if the concern really is about traffic arriving to the Harrison's house, why don't they put a gate and a lock where it departs from the easement into their property?
And that is one of the things that the Harrisons plan to do, but they can't do that across the access easement if it stays as is. The public has the right to access that road, and if we put up a gate without doing this vacation, that will be a violation of the easement. So we cannot do that until this vacation occurs.
But the easement doesn't go down to their house. The driveway starts in the easement and goes down at a certain point. I don't know what the distance is to the house, but it's not trivial. There's a difference. The easement doesn't go down into where their house is. It's the driveway. It's the same for the Williams.
Commissioner Fitch, this is Mark Painter. I'm Jordan Bunch's colleague. I see what you're saying about you could put a fence right very close to the house or a gate close to the house, but in terms of the safety concerns, you still would have people driving in immediately adjacent to their home because their home is close to the edge of Outlot A, and all along that northern boundary of lots 1 and 2. The intent is to put a fence and a gate there where this is vacated so that their property, I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine because we call that an outlot, but it could be lot 5. It is owned by them. And so if you were to look at what they own, it's kind of a flag shape. And that portion of the outlot that's above their 2 lots, they would like to have that secured so that people aren't coming in very close to their house, especially given the concerns that Nicole stated. There's just no need for people to be coming that close to their home.
So Commissioner Fitch again. So that's why I asked about what the historic uses were. And so the question would be, how much traffic do they get? If people are coming up into Outlot A on the easement, what are they doing? How often does that occur?
The Harrisons can answer that, but my understanding is that because there's no limitation on people driving, the road is called Outlot R that goes through the entrance to the Boulder Valley Farm, and people driving around at night or during the day and exploring or not having other good reasons to be there, drive in and either expect that road to go somewhere and it doesn't because it dead ends in their property, or they're driving out there to do something else. And that's where the concern comes from, is if you're in your home and there are people right there, you want to know why they're out there in this very vulnerable place. There isn't a reason for them to be out there is kind of the answer. So what they're doing is, maybe the Harrisons can answer further. I'll let them do that.
Yeah, Commissioner, Craig Harrison, the applicant. I'll just jump in. I would say it's hard to give an exact number, but we have a lot of delivery people that are lost that come up here. We do have a variety of people that, we are at the very end. So one of the other challenges we have, I get your point on putting the gate in. We would also need some sort of a turnaround area, and that becomes a little challenging just given the proximity from our driveway to where it turns in. But, I would say we've had visitors at all hours of the day, including the middle of the night.
Also, I want to just touch on the historic use. This property, our neighbors were the son of the home we live in. So it was the mother or the man and woman and their son who lived in our neighbor's house. So the historic use was them driving between each other's homes, and that no longer is needed.
Thank you.
Other questions, if any? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on to the public hearing component, or the public testimony part of the public hearing, excuse me. So I believe we have a list of people signed up already. I'm going to pull that up here, and we'll go through those names first. Staff will promote people to be part of the panelists so that you can speak and share video if you will, if you wish. A reminder to all the speakers from the public, each person will have 3 minutes individually unless they've pulled time. And you'll hear a beeping noise, which I'll ask Rick to play here in a second at the end of your time. Rick, just feel free to beep it when you have a chance. And I'll let you know when your 3 minutes have expired. Please finish your statement and we'll go on to the next person at that point. There you go. So we have 7 people signed up. We'll go through those names first, and then following that, we'll ask for others who wish to speak, who can either sign up in the chat, have done so already, or can speak up at that time. Again, the phone number information is also posted to the chat if anybody wants to call in. We'll go through these names. Just a note that I have to leave the meeting at 3 p.m. and Mark's going to take over as chair at that point. If we are still talking, then I'll have to leave at that point. But thanks to Mark for following up for me. We're going to start the public commentary with Pamela Williams. Is Pamela here in the Zoom meeting?
Yes.
Okay, yep, we got you. Go ahead.
Hi.
And if everybody can share their name and address when they start, that's how we like to begin it off. Thank you.
So we're going to pool our time together. We have 3 speakers, myself, my husband, Jim Williams, and Ed Byrne.
Okay, is Ed here as well?
He's going to have to dial in on his own.
Okay, I see he's in the meeting. So I think we're good. You should have 10 minutes then for the pooled time.
Oh, perfect.
Thanks.
Well, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Jim Williams, and my wife Pamela is here with me. We are the actual owners of Lot 3 and Lot 4 at Boulder Valley Farm. We purchased our farm before the city bought Boulder Valley Farm from the Culvers. We eventually bought Lot 4 as well, so we own 2 of the 4 lots up here. And we bought it knowing that there was an existing plat, and we were very interested in the plat and researched it quite a bit before we agreed to buy the property up here. We really were counting on the easement across the outlot, and we have a traditional outlot up here, irrespective of what other people are saying. We believe it's an outlot that has certain things in it that we need to make our lots work, such as access, utilities, fire access, little things that are very important when you go to buy a property. So we got assurances from many people, from the seller, the attorneys, everybody. It's all in writing saying that we didn't have to worry about losing our access. And our access included, of course, more than just a driveway. So it was noteworthy that when one of the previous talkers was talking about the easement being vacated, they make it seem that it's a 60-foot road and we're shrinking it down to 20 feet, something like that. That's not exactly accurate. The roadway actually runs along 60 feet beside my property on the northern side. So it's the utility easement, everything is supposed to be in there with the road. The road is at the north part of the easement. So it takes up 20 feet over on that side. So what's actually happening is we're not shrinking the road. We're shrinking the buffer between me and the road. So my neighbor will now be able to put up another fence like he has along my other property line. It's a 6-foot tall privacy fence made out of cedar, blocking my view of the mountains. It also affects all the native wildlife, the turkeys, everything we have up here. So I'm not looking forward to having these people take the county out of the equation and taking the buffer away from us that we need to live in peace up here. We were very happy up here before all of these changes that came about in the last year. We run a small organic farm up here, so we have livestock. We raise critically endangered mulefoot pigs, and we also raise caracal sheep, heritage turkeys. We sell eggs to the city and the different residents around here. So we're not sure why we need to change what we've had in place for 40 years. The easement has been there since 1982 in one form or another. Why do we need to change it because a new guy comes in and buys a house beside us? It doesn't make sense to us. And we are completely opposed to giving up anything that should be held in perpetuity by the county. Eventually, there may be another road that comes from Outlot Q, which is the northern part going to 95th Street. So there may be a road, there may not, but let's keep the option open so that we would have a different way in and out of here in case the county wants to, the city wants to move us off of Outlot R to the south. So there's a lot of details. It's a very complicated matter up here, but what we are opposed to is anybody changing the existing easements and outlots that are in place right now. And with that, I'll go ahead and forward this over to my wife, and she has her own opinion on it, but mine's pretty cut and dried. We run a farm. We don't need any changes at all. Everything's working fine. Of course, there is a neighbor squabble, and that's fine. Many people have those. Eventually they get solved and people work together over time. Vacating easements is not going to be very helpful. And here's my wife, Pamela Williams.
Hi, thank you. I won't say, I don't really have that much more to add to that. We'll let Ed speak to the rest. I just wanted to reiterate that we did buy our property 3 years ago with the understanding that there was a county platted 60-foot easement on it. We had assurances from the seller, his lawyer, the title company, everybody at the time that we didn't have to work on that. We had asked for a private easement. They said we didn't need to do that at that time because we could rely on the county easement. We've been residents of Boulder County for 20 years. We love this county. We stayed in Boulder County to build our farm for a reason. We truly believe that our values and what we're trying to do with our sustainable and regenerative farming practices and raising critically endangered and rare breeds of livestock, that this fits within the goals and the objectives of Boulder County. And we would love to stay here and be a part of that community. But we're feeling very disappointed by this process. And we submitted many comments, as did others, that we just don't feel are being considered adequately. And I'll turn it my rest of my time to Ed. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. This is Ed Byrne, 250 Arapahoe Avenue here in Boulder. And thank you for allowing us to participate in this meeting. My biggest problem with this is that it's like you're pulling out the keystone piece. The right-of-way that currently exists, once it's gone, there's no getting it back. And at the moment, there are utility lines under it. If we're going to revisit this block 3 of the farm in Boulder Valley, it should be done consciously in the context of the larger subdivision. For whatever reason, and it presumably because the city bought a bunch of the development potential on the east side of 95th Street, they never really finished this block in the subdivision. They couldn't have created easements across what is now Outlot J, owned by the city, when it was all owned by the Culvers and the Fenwicks. Fenwick sold to the Williams, and the Culver estate sold to the Harrisons. They didn't pick up the utilities easements that should have been created over the northwest corner of Outlot J. And that's all part of an exemption plat process, but that isn't currently before you, and it's not in front of the county in any other way, shape, or form. And it should be. I mean, we shouldn't be looking at this outside of that larger context. Outlots are typically not for sale. When they're placed in a subdivision, they're built in as buffer, and they're kind of available to the people in the HOA who are next door to it. They never got to the point of the HOA taking this over. It was contemplated in the subdivision agreement that at time of development this would happen, but it didn't. And for that reason, we're now dealing with kind of, we got our hand on the tail of this large dog. And if you allow this vacation to happen without addressing these other issues, then there's no getting back any need you might have to place utilities in the right of way. That is now gone because it will be owned by the Harrisons. And the Harrisons purchased Outlot A. Had it been offered, or had it been for sale, there was no reason to believe that it would be when the Williams purchased before the Harrisons did. Fenwick was a co-founder under these various agreements. He was one of the people who dedicated the land under which Outlot A was designated. And we're now, by unraveling it, it creates a situation where what was available just beyond the property, and it's not unusual. Obviously, the people who live next to an outlot in a typical subdivision, it's often play area. I mean, it's an area that everybody kind of shares within the same subdivision. So it's been difficult to wrap our brains around what happened, why, and why. We offered to consult with them about these other issues so that we could deal with it all. And it just never happened. We never were able to sit down with them and come to the county with a proposal that would sort out all of the issues that were not dealt with when Block 3 was just kind of left unfinished after the city purchased. And if you want, you can look at page 55 in the original docket materials, which is kind of a blow up of the northwest corner of this parcel that shows the utility lines coming in. Some of them are under this right of way and some of them aren't. We have, there's no objection to them vacating the right of way in front of their parcel as long as, in front of parcels 1 and 2, as long as provision is made for the utilities to come through there, because they currently serve both houses. And just from a practical perspective, they couldn't create those easements while the Culvers and Fenwick owned Outlot J. But you can't create an easement over property that you own. It needed to be created at the time of sale to the city, is when it should have happened. So, I mean, we're here not so much to pick a fight as to make sure that the ramifications of this vacation request are considered. The Louisville Fire Department is saying, Fire Protection District, is they're worried about bringing their equipment across the Leggett ditch. And the idea back when was that there would be secondary access. And we would ask you to put this on hold. We'd be happy to sit down with the county and sort these issues out as part of an overall solution.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, moving on our list. Next will be Kyle Callahan. And Kyle, are you able to unmute and introduce yourself?
There we go. Hi. Hi, everybody. Kyle Callahan here, architect, address 2975 Valmont Road here in Boulder, Colorado. Full disclosure, I'm an architect. I'm working with the Williams family now and helping them with a couple of their existing farm buildings. for a point of reference, I grew up on a dairy farm in upstate New York in the 60s, nowhere near Woodstock. But I do have experience in farming. I think this proposal to vacate an easement on the table is just wrong. I'd like to go on record and say that I'm against it. I have that experience living on a farm, and I have experience working here in Boulder County, doing architecture for 20 plus years, and I'm a little surprised and perplexed that we see so frequently that we develop the ire of the community when good agricultural land is turned into residential land or hobby farms. And here we have a real live working farm, and there are moves being made to make it more difficult to farm. And I think that's a travesty. And I'm surprised that we've moved so quickly to say that we should do that. Having grown up on a farm, I know the farming operations are difficult, the equipment is large, and curtailing this easement for some reason doesn't seem to support the mission of agriculture in Boulder County. I think, let's see, perspective, right. From a planning perspective, I find it odd that we have a 60-foot easement on one side of outlet A in outlet R, and we have another one on the other side, also 60 feet, outlet Q, and that we would try to insert in between those a 20-foot easement. It just feels like that fragments a system that had been thought of in 1992 and codified in the NUPUD and is now being considered for revoking that. I'd like to say for utility considerations, for the utilities to even consider changing an easement without first considering the infrastructure that's in place that has no future or no means of rectifying its situation. I think that's putting the cart before the horse, to use some farming terminology. And then for life safety, I just want to go out and say, if we're limiting access in any way, by any means, in times when we see terrible fires all over the place, if we're going to make it more difficult for a fire department to get into a place and rescue people and fight fires, that's the wrong thing to do. So anyway, I'm against this, and thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next is Peter Najjar. Do we have Peter? There you go.
You do.
Go for it.
You do. Originally, I was against it, and I changed.
Can you give your address, Peter, please?
Oh, I live on Phillips Road, right above Lot A. My address is 9900 Phillips Road, Lafayette.
Thank you.
I was originally against it, and I changed my position to for it. I just see no reason to keep this Lot A easement in place. Plus, in addition to that, I was kind of bothered by some misrepresentation by the Williams of their position. And that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm done.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Eric Foster is next.
Thank you very much. Eric Foster, 9616 Phillips Road on the north side of Outlot A. I wanted to take the opportunity to thank staff and the commission for your consideration of this proposal. I too, like Peter, was one of the original 20 that signed a letter opposing this application. And I will echo Peter's frustrations with what I would consider an egregious misrepresentation of the details by the Williamses. I fully support this application. I think it is an outdated easement. I do not believe that there are any fire access issues. There is no road to 95th to complete the access to these lots. And with the acquisition of this land by the city of Boulder for conservation purposes, I see no reason, nor would I support any additional access on the north side of these lots through Outlot A. I believe that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Eric. And our last signed up speaker is Charlie Peterson.
Hello, my name is Charlie Peterson. I'm at 9774 Phillips Road. So the south part of my property looks down over these lots. I just wanted to bring up 3 points. I'm somewhat ambivalent on the change now because now I'm hearing some other sides of it during this the testimony and the things that are being related here, but I still want to bring up these points because I think they're worthwhile making. Number one, I'm a little concerned about the access to the property and the security arguments because those aren't ringing true to me. That's a very remote property. And I kind of follow along with Commissioner Fitch, who said if they really want the security, they can put a gate on their driveway without changing the easement. And that's pretty simple. Second point that I want to make is with the Boulder Valley Farm having been sold, there's something going to change down there. You know, that entire area is going to be subject to new plans. It's going to be, I don't know if it's going to be developed or what's going to happen to it, but it's not going to have any kind of an answer soon. But why not just wait for the larger plan? There seems to be nothing that's urgent in the vacation of this easement that would dictate that it be done now. So I don't know what the rush is. I don't understand that. And it doesn't seem to be that impactful. Third point that I would make is no matter what, there's an oil well that's up there in that property. So that's already a place that's got some access to it. There is a risk, I would think, by the development of whatever plans are coming up, that at some point in the future, there could be roads that are developed in that area or additional access to 95th. I realize nothing like that is under discussion today. However, I want to mention that on 95th right now, it is super dangerous. And getting out of Phillips Road where I live today is kind of a dicey proposition. You have to gauge the traffic, figure out when you've got a break in the traffic and hope that nobody is turning on to 95th from a place where you can't see. So if there does eventually wind up being additional traffic access onto 95th in a place that's a blind spot for traffic coming out of Phillips Road, that adds safety risk that I would not support in any way. So again, my summary is I don't see what's broken. I don't really see the risk. I don't see any reason to change it. So there you go. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, that's the end of our list of signups. I'll just give a chance for anybody who's in the Zoom meeting who would still like to speak on this topic. If you want to put your name and address in the chat. And then also, if anybody on the phone who's called in, if you'd like to speak, you can press *9 to raise your hand, I believe, and then staff can unmute you if that's the case. I'll just give a few seconds for anybody else who wants to speak. Okay, hearing none, we're going to close public comment on this docket and move on to our own discussion of what we've heard today. So commissioners, what are your comments and questions?
Hi, this is Erica Rogers, Assistant County Attorney. Just wanted to point out you need to give the applicant and the staff a chance to respond to the public comment.
Okay, thanks, Erica. I forget something every time. All right, so for staff, for Ryan, a chance to respond to anything that was raised, and then we'll hear from the applicant after that.
Yeah, so we had a question or comment put into the chat to look at a map here to see what will be proposed or what would be proposed through the exemption plat. So I'm going to share my screen to put that up and then address a couple things with what we heard there is what we've heard today as well. So are we able to see my screen? Okay. So there was a question about if we had received something showing what's proposed through the exemption plat, kind of what's proposed post this vacation application. So that would be what we're looking at here. Obviously vacating the proposal for shown in this kind of thicker dashed black line here for that access easement. We also heard from the public a comment about an oil well I'm going to scroll a couple pages up. We'll go right back to where I was. This aerial does a better job than me talking about it. On the parcel to the north of Outlot A, there is an existing well. You can see its access being pulled here, which is east of Outlot A there. So there was a comment about that. I want to clarify that it's not on Outlot A, it's north of Outlot A on, I think it's Outlot J. And then back here to this map to show what is being proposed after this is up. I think the question came from maybe Commissioner Libby in the chat. I'm bad at finding the chat while I'm talking.
Yeah, this is my question. Thanks, Ryan. It's just related to this exact graphic. So the dashed line is the exemption plat that's proposed in the separate docket?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and then the only other response from staff is that this is the applicants own Outlot A, as well as lots 1 and 2, but they own Outlot A, and they do have the right to ask for this application. That's what we're hearing here. And to look at this access easement, the location of utility easements and that nature are a private matter that we county staff don't have the ability to grant a easement or things like that out there. So that's when we're looking at this application, we're looking at this the vacation and eventually exemption plat of the access easement that we can see here on the screen. So that's a staff's response.
Okay, that's it for Ryan. So the applicants, if they're still on, would you like to respond to anything?
We're having to do a lot of jockeying of position to keep our 6 feet distance in our conference room here. So sorry for the technology issues.
No problem.
Again, I'm Mark Painter with Holland and Hart, representing the Harrisons. And there are a number of points I think we need to respond to here. First of all, on the point that was made by Charlie Peterson, I think it's I think it is kind of telling that out of all these objectors who objected because of a petition that the Williams started with them, the only people who came and objected were the Williams and their attorney and their architect. And Mr. Peterson was kind of ambivalent on things, and other people withdrew their objections because of the misrepresentations. The issue here with respect to what's the hurry or why not wait for a study, Bethany Collins is here as a participant, and I would ask that she maybe confirm some things that I'm going to say now so that you're hearing from Open Space directly. But as was in my letter that I delivered to you all on Monday, the charter purposes for open space are such that they cannot grant private roads out or roads for private uses. They cannot improve open space lands unless it enhances wildlife or otherwise serves the public purpose of the charter of open space. And she can cite you better chapter and verse on that. But what that means is that in order to put a road in for this secondary access that we're only talking about because it was on a plat that is now almost 30 years old, and is totally antiquated, obsolete, an anachronism because none of the property is being developed out other than these 4 houses. None of the rest of the property is being developed out as it was intended with that original plat. And so for them to put in a road like that, they would have to have it would have to A, meet the charter, B, it would have to be voted upon and approved by the Board of Open Space, and then it would also have to be approved by the City Council, and then it would be subject to a 60-day call for a referendum by the community. So it's it simply is, as Jordan said, a practical impossibility. And this study that they're talking about is a study that hasn't started and may not start for years. But I think Bethany will confirm to you that when it does start, its focus is going to be on how to use this land in furtherance of open space, open space's charge, not how to help create a secondary access so that the Williams can develop on lot 4. And so that goes also to this question about the fire department. There is no requirement for secondary fire access now. The fire department said that the bridge would appear not to be adequate. There's no, there hasn't been any engineering finding of that. So I think it's a little bit of speculation. It's an important thing to note, though. I mean, we don't want to downplay safety issues at all. But as far as what's on the table right now with this vacation, the issue of the bridge is an issue that comes up if the Williams decide they want to build another house on lot 4. It comes up if there's a substantial modification and their building permits requested for those substantial modifications, that they would look at that access to see if that's a requirement. So it's premature to be looking at that. It's just speculation too, because there's nothing here in the record that says that there's anything that that proves that that bridge is inadequate. And besides, there's saying, well, we need to leave this access in place for a secondary access to come across City of Boulder open space. Again, we just run into that wall of open space land is not going to be converted into a private driveway for secondary access. It just isn't, as a practical matter. Another question that was raised was utility easements. Mr. Byrne, who I respect and who's been a friend of mine for many years, has been arguing strongly for his clients, and I appreciate that. You will notice in the plat, and I'm not, let's see where, it's in the rebuttal. On the plat, well, I'll refer you to the materials he has in the staff recommendation. He notes in note 3 that there's a utility easement that attaches to road outlots. But if you look at note 8, it says, except for outlot Q and outlot R, and it specifically lists which are the road outlots on that, on the plat in note 8. And outlot Q is the outlot that would be this secondary access if it were ever installed. It never has been. But there's no utility access to go along with that, nor is there a utility access that's to go along with R. And outlot A is not listed as one of those road lots. It's not a road lot. It's simply a lot that's been subject to a conservation easement for many years. Now, that said, we have talked already with Public Service, XL, about documenting the easements that are implied because they've been there since these houses were put in. There's an electric line that goes across the north side of the open space property that services the Harrison residents and services the Williams residents. And we are happy, and we called for locates, and Excel is doing that now. We are happy to have that easement documented. There's no issue there. There's a gas line that goes to the Harrison residence, and that's where it stops. And we're happy to document that with Excel. And Excel is happy with that. That's just fine. They're not asking us to do anything more. And this notion that Mr. Byrne is raising about, well, there are all sorts of other easements out here that need to be solved. That is, what is happening is he would like to have more property rights than he got when he bought this property. And he has the right to ask for those, but that's not really something that he should be coming before the Planning Commission to try and do. That's something that can be worked out separately if he has those rights, but they have nothing to do with this access easement. In terms of, I want to take a look at my notes. In terms of it being a pulling of the keystone piece of this loop road because of some master plan that existed before, it isn't the keystone of anything. It's the dead end of an old road that does go to nowhere, and by virtue of the fact that Outlot A dead ends into Boulder, City of Boulder open space, it can't go anywhere there anyway. So it's not a keystone to anything. That plan, to the extent it even existed, doesn't exist anymore, and didn't have anything to do with these 4 lots anyway. And Mr. Byrne talks about the HOA. There is no HOA that's in effect for these. There was an HOA that was planned at one point. It doesn't exist. That HOA, and he's talking about typical outlots. Yes, the phrase outlot or the term outlot is used a lot when you do a common area in developments, but also outlots end up being sold to people as private land too. And that's what the Harrisons bought, was they bought Outlot A and lots 1 and 2. And there's nothing in title, there's nothing in the Williams property rights that gives them any greater rights to Outlot A than they have to the Harrisons lots 1 or 2, or anything else they didn't buy for that matter. Outlot A doesn't have any special purpose under the covenants that gives the Williams any rights. Those HOA covenants, though, do say that you're not supposed to have animals on your property. So you need to be kind of careful about what you're going to do, how you pick and choose which covenants you're going to rely on and which ones you may not want to. And that's part of the problem here, is that the Williams would like to use Outlot A as theirs in many ways. They park their vehicles on it without permission. They trapped hawks on it without permission. We did try many, many months ago. We tried working with county staff, the county attorney's office, and the Williams to work on some common scheme there. But when we objected to them taking another access point into their property immediately adjacent to our property, they went around the county attorney, they went around their own attorney, didn't tell him, and applied for an access point without anybody knowing about it. And once they got it, they cut off communications regarding settlement. And now they're complaining that people are not coming to them and trying to work through things in good faith. All of that is kind of a sideshow, though. The fact is that this is an access easement, and an access easement only. It doesn't provide anything with respect to utilities. And nothing we do with respect to the access easement, vacate it, not vacate it, is going to affect any utilities that the Williams have or will have in the future anyway. What is very much in front of everybody is that this is a road that doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't serve any purpose to the county. It doesn't have a safety aspect to it that serves any other purpose. And the conditions that are required for vacation are all met. And there's a very real need that the Harrisons have expressed for stopping having the public have such access to their property, and Outlot A is their property. Bethany, can you confirm what I'm saying about Boulder Valley Farm property?
Unfortunately, the public comment period is closed, so, but thank you for your comments, and we will now go into discussion amongst, well, we'll start with questions any commissioners might have for staff or for the applicant. We'll open it up for that now. And before we get into that, staff, if I err from any of the the things that I need to do as chair, please feel to jump in and correct me.
So Commissioner McMillan, I have a question for staff about the exemption plat that's in process. And my question is the only item on that exemption plat the vacation of this easement, or are there other items being corrected as well?
That's it. The exemption plat's just for this easement, for what we're talking about here.
Okay. Second question for you and perhaps the city of Boulder. I missed if they had a comment on this, but I do find it kind of odd that there's these outlots that clearly are a road. This easement, clearly seem to be the connection of all those outlets ringing around, and vacating this would certainly put a hole in that loop. And I wonder what their position, the city's position as the owner of the remaining pieces, if you received any comment from them on their plans to do anything, I suppose, that would include this easement that we're speaking of vacating, given that it's the piece that connects all those outlets together.
Yeah, I'll address that quickly. I think we maybe have somebody here. I also might kick this to Conrad Lattis, who's with Boulder County, attorney with Boulder County Parks and Open Space, for him to comment on it as well for you here. But I'd say from staff, we haven't received no comment from the city of Boulder, and have not received any indication that there's any use or need for the access easement across to Outlot A as it is. I know, understand what you're saying when you look at it and you can see those connections, but they've made those statements to us. I'll maybe let Conrad, though,
sure,
jump in here.
Conrad Lattis, County Attorney's Office. I have had some discussions with the city of Boulder about this and their intentions. When I first spoke with the city of Boulder, which was almost a year ago, the city had talked about having an interest, perhaps in the future, to replace the road that goes along Outlot Q with a road, that goes along Outlot R with a road that goes along Outlot Q from 95th Street, simply because it would be less road on their open space. However, as we all dug further into the documents related to this property, one of the things that became clear is that the city couldn't do that because the owners of lots 1 through 4 have this road maintenance agreement that grants them a perpetual easement along the current road for Outlot R. And so what that means is that even if the city were to put in a road on Outlot Q, it would not have the unilateral ability to get rid of the road on Outlot R. And the city has, at least as expressed to me, has no interest in having a loop road or two roads on this property. So my interactions with the city lead me to believe that the city has no interest in developing a road on Outlot Q.
And Commissioners, this is Kim Sanchez. If I could interject, we do have Bethany Collins from the City of Boulder who is able to speak to you if you'd like to allow her, if you have questions. So Anna, why don't you go ahead and promote Bethany, and the commission can go ahead and direct any questions they have to her. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I am happy to answer any questions or confirm things that you have heard. A great deal of what Conrad just said is the case as far as the road maintenance agreement. We cannot unilaterally change or alter the access without agreements from the owners of lot 1 through 4. Mark Painter and Jordan Bunch also painted a fairly accurate picture that improving open space after acquisition, whether it's for a road, whether it's for a building, a trailhead, et cetera, has to comply with our charter purposes. And also, anywhere other than one of the designated road outlots is also subject to county conservation easements over almost all of our, or actually all of our property, except for perhaps block 5 on the plat. So we would be subject to having to go through county approval, as well as likely land use permitting for grading, things like that. So there would be a substantial public process that is not envisioned for any kind of secondary or alternative access at this time. The planning efforts you guys are hearing about, the property, the Boulder Valley Farm property was acquired in 2018. It is closed to the public. It is leased for agricultural, to an agricultural tenant. And so it will not be open to the public until a substantial management planning effort is undertaken. Again, very public process that would involve the neighbors, surrounding neighbors and any other member of the public who wants to participate in that planning effort, which would also look at, various features like, that would accommodate passive recreation, agricultural, natural resource values of the properties, things like that. So again, switching the road or providing a residential only access from 95th other than the current access would require justification under our charter for things like, that it's to protect the land, it's for better management or things like that. But again, it's a very public process and also would require cooperation from lots 1 through 4 per the road maintenance agreement. Is that helpful?
It is. Yeah,
Thank
very
you.
helpful. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions or?
Well, I
gathering
was
still?
gonna say, if I have other questions, but if there are questions for Bethany, maybe that others have while she's on the mic, we can take those before I move on.
I'm not seeing any, so go for it, Gavin.
Okay. This question for staff, is there any reason, we have, as proposed in this exemption plat, which we're not reviewing, but after the vacation, this new easement, stopping short of going all the way west to, I think it's lot 1, which isn't needed right now. But it seems like as long as that's being done, it might make sense to just provide access to all the lots. I'm sorry. To provide access to all the lots. And I haven't heard really the reason why you wouldn't extend that new easement to the last lot. It just seems odd to me to have a lot that doesn't have a way to access it should it change hands. So it's a bit of a comment, but the question to staff is there any reason why you wouldn't just extend that new easement all the way to the west?
Gavin, this is Conrad Lattice again. And I think that really the way to look at this is that the county doesn't see any need for there to be a public right-of-way here at all. Generally, when you have a group of 4 houses, you don't have a public road going to their house. You have a private driveway. And the county would have been willing to vacate the entire access easement here if it were not for the inability of these landowners to come up with a maintenance agreement about how they would maintain and share this driveway. So it is customary when there is a owner who owns 2 lots and sells one of them to grant an easement through the retained lot to the other one. And if they don't, there is an implied easement of necessity that is imputed by a court in that kind of situation. So, I represent Boulder County Public Works, formerly Transportation, and our transportation folks do not see any reason for there to be a county easement, county held easement in this area.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Conrad, this is Commissioner Bloomfield. If I could just jump in, you just mentioned an easement of necessity. Would that apply to something like utility easements, which we don't seem to have here?
I think there are probably several theories upon which the utility companies could claim that they have easements, but that's not really an issue before us, and it doesn't involve Boulder County. But it also sounds as though both of these owners of the lots are interested in establishing easements for utilities. So they are free to do that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Dan, you look like you're gearing up.
I do have a question regarding the vacation review item B. Unless otherwise noted, the portions of the road or alley vacated will be divided down the center line and added to the respective adjacent property. Can staff talk a little bit more about how adjacent properties are being treated and why there's no concept of a center line here?
This is Conrad Lattice again. The reason that there is no conveyance as a result of this partial vacation to the folks on either side is that all the county owns right now is an access easement. We don't have a fee simple interest in the dirt that access easement is on. And so the underlying owner of the entire Outlot A is the Harrisons, and it will remain the Harrisons.
Okay,
Does that
thank you.
make sense to you?
Yes, thanks.
And while we're talking about sort of the legal rights, this is Commissioner Bloomfield again. My understanding is that that they essentially have the legal right to request this, and as long as they meet the requirements, then they meet the requirements and they get the vacation. Is that correct?
That's correct. Brian Kasaric, staff.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions for staff? Seeing none, let's open it for our discussion. Anybody have some initial thoughts?
Commissioner Fitch again. I'm struggling with the same question that Dan just asked about what are the applicable criteria here. So normally when we have a vacation request, the big issue is somebody disadvantaged by this request, or is it essentially some good that's being generated by vacating the easement in this case? Again, Dan cited the usual practice. If it's a road in Eldorado Township, for example, the normal vacations criteria would divide whatever's being vacated by two property owners to the center line. In this case, there's no center line. The Harrisons own all of Outlot A. They don't, that ownership is still subject to the existing access. So my real concern is it seems like what we're being asked to do is to adjudicate a conflict between two neighboring property owners who have not been able to settle that conflict among themselves. And that in essence, we're being asked to use the Planning Commission as an arbitrating agency by favoring one or the other. It seems like that's an inappropriate use of the vacation process. So at a minimum, it seems to me, we should be thinking about what public interest is advanced by taking one position or the other, or is this purely a private dispute that they should go, as they apparently have to some degree, looking for, there's a trespassing issue of Williams farm vehicles on some portion of Outlot A, whether it's included or not in the easement or would be excluded from the easement if it were reduced to 20 feet. These seem like private issues that are subject to differing claims about what rights people have. We're not judges, we're certainly not land use attorneys. It's my inclination to say, at a very minimum, we should be asking, is there anything here that would advance the goals of the Boulder Valley Comp Plan for one side or the other? I think there's a safety issue with the bridge and possible access for both the Harrisons and the Williams if they have to cross that bridge across the irrigation ditch. But I think it's also true that's a concern that's been raised by the Lafayette Fire District. It's a concern that exists before the vacation, before either of these property owners purchased that. It will exist afterwards. I don't see anything else other than the possible claim of the Williams to be using part of their property for agricultural uses. I don't think that's banned by the vacation. But I don't think it's really a good reason for favoring the opposition to the vacation or for granting the vacation. It strikes me in this case we're not playing our proper role, or we're being asked to play a role where the only thing that matters is that one party owns both sides of the existing access easement. So unless there's some convincing argument, my position is that I'm not willing to vote for the vacation. I'd be willing to table it rather than reject it. Commissioners could take it up as they take up the exemption plat, but I really don't see what the public interest in this dispute is.
Thanks, Sam.
End of my rant.
Commissioner McMillan, ask a follow-up question, if possible. Sam, what if you were to table it? What would you ask them to come back with, or what additional information would you ask for?
Sorry, had to remember to unmute. I would hope that both parties would either go find a mediation service that would allow them to bring a joint proposal for how they want to present this, since it seems to me that they both have some interest in the outcome of what happens, what is permitted or not permitted under a smaller access agreement, the 20-foot agreement that I think the Harrisons would be committed as a matter of record to take to the Boulder County Commissioners. But there's no guarantee the commissioners would take it, and the commissioners may well say, as I would say, my recommendation to them was leave it on the table until the parties come back with some kind of agreement. There are various ways that might be reached. One way would be to say, fix the bridge so it can take the safety issue off the table. Another issue is there's explicit language about when, where, and how often vehicles from the Williams could cross through that 20-foot portion of Outlot A to get to their outlot, which is on the other side. It just seems like to me there are lots of details here. Both sides have lawyered up, good lawyers on both sides, but I don't see that any of them has said anything beyond pointing a finger at the other side to say they're the people preventing an agreement from happening. So if that's true, then they can both go through a mediation process or some other process. Or they could simply go to the county commissioners and say, take this off the table. Grant the vacation. We are only recommending to the Board of County Commissioners what we think they should do. I don't see the county commissioners have any greater skill at adjudicating these competing claims than we do. So I'm just reluctant to be put in a role that I think is not asking about what are the larger public interests at stake, what are the justifications in terms of values or policies that are established in the Boulder Valley Comp Plan.
So this is Commissioner Bloomfield. Thank you, Sam, for all of that. I want to just address one thing as the centerline division. I think usually when we're evaluating a vacation request like that, we're talking about a right-of-way where the property is essentially owned by the county. And so then the vacation of that public right-of-way gets divided between the adjacent landowners. That's not the case that we have here. The case that we have here is that it is property that is owned by the Harrisons, and they're looking for this vacation. And so it makes sense to me that the property would then default to them because they own it. As Conrad mentioned, you know, the county has no say over the dirt, only the access. As far as our evaluation here, Sam, I agree that we shouldn't be getting in the middle of sort of private squabbles. I certainly don't know. I've only heard little snippets here and there what's going on. I honestly don't really care what's going on. The proposal that you're making, though, seems to me that it is, and I'll say I'm offering this as a counterpoint. I'm not convinced of my own argument. It seems like you're actually taking into account, well, there's some kind of private quarrel going on here, and so we shouldn't approve this vacation request. So my question is, would we approve this vacation request if we didn't know anything about it, or if there was no private squabble? As far as what's the public good, and is this supported by or is this supportive of the comp plan, et cetera, et cetera? I don't necessarily see that as a requirement of the vacation review. Certainly we make vacation we recommend approval of vacation requests where there's not necessarily a public benefit. It's more just getting rid of some antiquated things, like your example of the town of Eldorado. There's an ancient plat that indicates all these roads that are never going to be built, etc. To the point of the bridge and that secondary access, it seems pretty clear to me that there's never going to be a secondary access. It's not clear to me whose responsibility the bridge is and whose responsibility it would be to upgrade the bridge to satisfy, if that's necessary, to satisfy the fire district's concerns. But that seems like it's outside the purview of this, what's before us now. It seems like what's before us is a vacation request, and we have to determine if they meet the, items A through E of the review. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear more.
This is Commissioner Neske. Thank you both for those comments, because they sort of threaded through what I've been thinking about. Hearing from the county with no intention of continuing that road. I can see the argument for the road to nowhere case, and wanting to have a little bit more privacy and security in their front driveway. In the past, when we've discussed vacating easements, typically if it's sort of like that, a road to nowhere, it makes sense to vacate it. They own Outlot A and the land under it. And for the neighboring concerns, if there was anything that would be negatively impacting them, that would be a concern. But I don't, and maybe you guys can jump in on this and correct me, but I don't know if I really hear the argument that it's a detriment to their farming or any other, considering that it's owned by their neighbors. So I feel less conflicted about the vacation, just because to me, I think I see that it makes sense to not continue it if there's no plans to do so. They own the land. So that's sort of where I'm at, but I do understand your point, Sam. I guess I was just talking through that. Anyone else? Does that make sense to anyone else here?
This is Commissioner McMillan. It does make sense, Melanie. I'll just say that I support the vacation. I don't see a need for the easement in its current state. It's a 60-foot wide easement that's going to be replaced with an easement that more accurately reflects what it's should be used for, which is just access to the two properties. Hearing that there's no need from the city for the easement, moving forward, I support the vacation. I would vote in favor of it. Thanks.
Commissioner Bloomfield again, or Commissioner Hilton, did you have something to say?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, you know, definitely to Sam's point about, you know, sort of trying to litigate private squabbles and whatnot. I would certainly encourage the applicants and their neighbors to work hard to figure out a utility easement so that going forward, we don't, it sounds like one of the things here is that, you know, back in the 80s, this got started and then it got abandoned somehow and it was never properly instituted and all of that. Certainly encourage all parties to just establish some utility easements so that going forward, we don't run into this. You know, utility easements are pretty much you know, on, I think, almost every, if not every thing that's come before this commission since I've been on it. It's just part of it. So I would certainly encourage everybody to work together and get that established so that it's not a concern going forward and so that it is kind of just taken out of the equation. Dan, you have something to say?
Yeah, I was just gonna basically agree that I think, you know, access to lots 3 and 4 is still being maintained through this request, and the whole purpose of the access easement is for access. So I don't really see a reason to decline the request. I don't think that there is a viable interest on the part of the county to develop the road through, to develop a connector through. So I would be supportive of moving forward with the request.
Thanks. Any other comments? Any other discussion? Not really hearing anyone. Does anybody have a motion?
I'll make a motion. This is Commissioner McMillan. I move the Planning Commission recommend the Board of County Commissioners conditionally approve docket V20-0006 Harrison vacation with the 3 conditions noted in the staff report.
Commissioner Neske, I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. I'll just do it by Zoom order. So Mark Bloomfield, aye. Melanie Neske.
Aye.
Sam Fitch.
Nay.
Gavin McMillan.
Aye.
And Dan Hilton.
Aye.
All right, so it passes 4-1. Thanks, everybody. And
Mark, if it's possible, could we take 5 minutes to handle a couple of things? Or this is a
Or coffee.
yeah, right.
Yes. All right. Staff, can you work your magic to do a 5-minute recess? So we'll be back at 3:40.
Great.
Hey, this is Commissioner Bloomfield. Looks like we have everybody back. So we will go to the public hearing for docket LE-20-0003 Eldorado Canyon State Park entrance improvements. And Ryan, I guess I should make sure that we are, or sorry, Rick, we should make sure that we are recording.
Yes, this is Rick Hagstaff. We are recording.
Great, thank you. Okay, Ryan, it looks like today's your day, so you're out.
Okay. Let's do the shared screen here again. So we are looking at LE 200003 Eldorado Canyon State Park entrance screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Perfect. Okay, so this is LE 20003 Eldorado Canyon State Park entrance. Planning Commission meeting. I'm Ryan Casaric, Community Planning and Permitting staff. So I probably should say that for this application. So the request today is a location and extent review. Review to look at the replacement of the existing entrance station building with a new building to reconfigure vehicular and pedestrian access and movement through the entrance area and improve drainage conditions at the entrance to Eldorado Canyon State Park. Location is 364 and 300 Eldorado Springs Drive. The zoning is business, state residential, and forestry. It's owned by the state of Colorado, Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Here's our vicinity map. We're really focused in this little square here, but this is Eldorado Canyon State Park area. Zooming further in using the hillshade, just I think most probably are familiar with it, but this is the state park as well. Here's our comprehensive plan map. Comprehensive plan map notes a number of environmental and natural resource components and considerations on the property, things that can all be seen here. It's a number of them are listed. I'll let everyone kind of read here at the, as opposed to me reading each one off to you all. And then here's our geological hazard map as well. There's geological hazards are mapped in this area in association with the canyon and the creek. And as I talked about South Boulder Creek, here's our floodplain map. The development and the proposed application is outside of the flood overlay district. However, there is floodplain in the general area, and we can see that listed here. And then popping right into an aerial map with all those layers taken off, just so we can get a good understanding here. Here's some site photos that I took. It was a nice day out there. This is the entrance area as it currently exists, both the entrance building, drive lanes, the bridge that crosses from the state park onto a private road that goes through the Eldorado Springs town site. Here's more photos taken from the parking lot, kind of on the west end of the parking lot here, near the entrance station. This is looking at the entrance station as you would be driving into the park, and then a little bit further back, you should see a car exiting the park in this picture. Here's a zoomed in aerial on the portion of the project that we're looking at here today. That is the development happening with the entrance booth and the parking lot here as proposed. So we'll hop into the site plan. This is a larger look at the site plan. In a second here, I'll go to another slide that'll zoom in on the entrance and the entrance features a little bit more. Here's our parking right now. And we'll talk about the parking here up front before we go to the other components to this. The parking is intended to, and is proposed to be expanded by 6 parking spots to add more parking. The way that's being achieved largely is just through more efficient use of space in the parking lot. This slide gives us more zoomed in view of kind of the entrance improvements that are proposed. First thing proposed is to deconstruct the existing ranger station, which I'm going to scroll back to here. We can see located here, and build a new ranger station, 200 square feet, same as the existing one. This is just to the north and west of where the current entrance station is located at. The next thing we're looking at here is to update vehicle access lane configuration to include 2 lanes versus the single one that's there right now. The one lane, the closest lane to the entrance station, my mouse is running over here, that's for day use visitors to enter the park, and then the lane up here is for permitted users, park staff, those Canyon residents or those residents that live off Neal Road into the, that have to access their homes through the park. That would be used for shuttle buses and emergency vehicles as well in that lane. The direct access lane, or that permitted lane, will be gated with an electronic entrance system as well, where the day use lane will continue to use the entrance booth. The intent of this is to sort of separate those two different groups and really to address an issue of when there's one lane right now, really having to back cars up. You see the bridge here all the way out because everybody has to go through this one entrance point. The idea of this is that this will separate those cars out, allowing those users that are permitted and those folks that live and have to access through the state park to travel around and through that lane. We can also see included in this reconfiguration right here, which is a turnaround lane. The intent of that being once the parking lot in the park is full and the park will need to turn people away, they will be able to route cars on that turnaround lane and have them exit and leave before hopefully not stacking up and having a long line of idling cars. There's also new pedestrian access proposed. We can see that in the dashed lines running right through the center here. This will is really designed to separate pedestrians out, give them more of a separated spot. When you looked at those pictures that I showed, you could see that the current configuration of it, the access lane is right next to the sidewalk. This allows for folks to get through there a little quicker. And then there's some stormwater and drainage improvements as well associated that are occurring with this development. Here's elevations of that ranger station that I talked about. That fairly similar to what had been previously out there. It's 200 square feet. And then they did provide a detailed landscaping plan. Again, I talked about some of those grading and drainage solutions. I'll note that all of this development is located within the same area of the current development. It's using the same kind of disturbed area as what's out there right now. So we received a number of responses. The chief building official commenting that building permits and plan review are required. Engineering review commenting that the driveway should comply with standards, that a letter from Rocky Mountain Fire Department approving the proposed design should be provided, that ADA parking spaces be shown, Americans with Disability Act, compliant parking spaces be shown on the plan, that bicycle parking be provided at 10% of the number of automobile parking spaces, electrical vehicle service station be provided, and that because area disturbance is within 100 linear feet of South Boulder Creek, a stormwater quality permit also be applied for. The wildfire mitigation folks with Boulder County commented, and wildfire mitigation is required. This is not in the floodplain overlay district, so it doesn't require a floodplain development permit. However, it's noted that staging or storage of construction equipment, materials, or vehicles shouldn't occur in the floodplain. There is no conflict identified with the comprehensive plan layers. Revegetation plan is required, and erosion control best management practices and construction fencing should be included and done so to protect the riparian area. We sent out 120 notifications to the public, received 11 written comments. These comments expressed the following concerns. Almost all comments expressed a concern with the current impact of vehicular traffic on the town site. That vehicular traffic being folks using the or entering the state park. The vehicular traffic impacts are particularly were noted in particular to queuing that would occur from vehicles not parking, but sitting, idling, waiting to enter the park. Also concerns with people wanting to access the park, not parking in the park, but parking on private property within the town site, and then concerns with the amount of traffic moving through the park or moving through the Eldorado Springs town site to the park, both the velocity or the speed of the movement of cars, the danger of the cars, particularly pedestrian movement, and just overall residents' ability to feel comfortable with those cars going through on the road there. There was a number of requests for a shuttle service to be introduced to the park to reduce traffic. The shuttle service picking up park users from a location east of the park outside of the Eldorado Springs town site and bringing them in. Similar to that request, it was a number of requests for a turnaround area to be established on the road east of the park to allow for folks to that are entering the park, if it becomes full, to turn around. Those were all requests received there. We also had concerns about bathroom capacity in the park, concerns with stormwater flowing off of the park property onto private properties, and then a number of concerns with the larger visitor management planning effort, which is an ongoing planning effort by the state of Colorado to address visitor impacts. There was concerns with the ability for public comment in regard to that process. I'll say here that that's not the process we're looking at here today. We're just looking at the entrance station. There's also a request for downlighting on the ranger station, and received a phone call request that emergency access be improved throughout the park and at the entrance, that those improvements to the entrance address vehicular traffic impacts on a much broader scale than just being able to turn cars around. That wider planning efforts be considered in advance of this application, and that conservation efforts be maintained, that anything happening here be done through a lens of conservation, and that safety be a priority. So looking at the review for location extent, Article 8-100A of the Land Use Code states the purpose of the location extent review is to determine whether a proposed public or quasi-public use or facility is consistent with the Boulder County Comprehensive Plan. So looking at some of the elements in the comprehensive plan, the environmental resources element, environmental resources are not expected to be impacted. There was no existing natural resource concerns that have been identified that would be impacted by this, largely because the proposed construction, the proposed development is occurring in the area where impact has already happened to that area. It's kind of the planning principle of keeping impacts to the location where they currently exist. Open space elements, looking at proposed improvements, they don't expand the disturbance, they don't go further into open space. The intent of the proposed improvements is to allow for more efficient use of the park through the park entrance. Transportation improvements will facilitate better movement and provide pedestrian access. And that, again, I'll note that the development is sort of a first step in and is part of a larger plan to address park impacts to Eldorado Canyon State Park associated with those park visitors. There was no cultural resources identified in the site location. Looking at some VCCP goals, C2, parks and open space and recreation facilities should be encouraged throughout the county and should be integrated whenever suitable with public facilities. And the intent of this is that with the proposed improvements will better integrate the park entrance with the surrounding community, mainly through increasing the efficiency of movement of visitors through the park entrance, hopefully decreasing the amount of times that there's cars idling or backed up into the Eldorado Springs town site. Another BCCP goal, C5, the private sector, non-county agencies, and other governmental jurisdictions should be encouraged to participate in open space preservation and trails development in Boulder County. Proposed improvements will aid in the facilitation of the visitor use management plan that I mentioned here a couple times. The entirety of the state parks within Boulder County, and includes a large amount of preserved open space, established trails, those kind of recreational facilities. And then finally, this didn't turn out as well as I hoped, but the BCCP goals, Eldorado Springs Town Site Plan Goal 3, which is to collaborate with Colorado State Parks and city and county agencies to find ways to address the impacts of park and open space visitors in the Eldorado Springs community. Staff has recommended what's shown here on the screen, a number of kind of changes to the overall plan that was provided. Chiefly looking at trying to increase the length of those two separated lanes to allow for more stacking to happen in this gray area, and making it a more clear runway for those people permitted to access through the park to actually access through the park. To do that would need to do what's shown in red here, which would be to kind of eliminate that that one turnaround, the idea being that there's a turnaround not far away from it, as it's currently used, as the park currently is. Folks have to drive in and turn around, and staff sees it. This isn't totally necessary and would make more sense to elongate both these lanes to allow for more room for potential queuing if it is there to happen. And we also recommended creating a bump out here along the sidewalk just to get that to one lane of traffic and reduce that kind of pedestrians having to cross two lanes. Hopefully they're just crossing one, a little less conflict there on that. So with the recommendations provided, staff recommends the Planning Commission conditionally approve docket LE 20003 Eldorado Canyon State Park entrance, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. And I've summarized them here as well. That all necessary building and grading permits be obtained, that wildfire mitigation occur, that an updated site plan provided showing required emergency access improvements, that a revised site plan showing ADA parking and bicycle parking and electrical vehicle stations be shown, and that stormwater quality permit be applied for and revegetation plan be submitted. That concludes staff's presentation.
Thanks, Ryan. Any questions on the staff presentation, commissioners?
Commissioner Fitch, Ryan, will you clarify whether the changes to the details of the traffic plan, eliminating that turnaround circle, those are recommended to the applicants, but not a condition of approval?
Yeah, they're recommended to the applicants. It came from staff's review of it, Boulder County Transportation Planning staff's review as well. Something provided to the applicants.
Thank you.
Can you speak as to why it's a recommendation and not a condition of approval?
I think it's something we recommend them explore more. I think probably getting into the how location and extent reviews work jurisdictionally. This is something that staff felt we should recommend, but we don't have a lot to make as a requirement for the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I've got a couple. I know there's a lot of public comment on the bathroom capacity. It seems like that's outside the purview of this docket item. Is that a fair assessment?
That's correct. I think it's probably a good comment to keep in, but it is outside of the purview of what we're looking at.
And as far as the request for downlighting, that would be something that would be taken care of through the actual permitting process. Is that correct?
Yeah, through a building permit that the dark skies.
Right. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Is the applicant on the call to make a presentation?
Hey, this is Scott Roush, the Deputy Regional Manager with Colorado Parks and Wildlife for the Northeast region. I appreciate you guys getting us on your agenda today, and appreciate Ryan running through the plan and everything we have there. We don't have a formal presentation for you to give to you. The plans are there. We see it as pretty straightforward in what's there. We can answer any of the questions that you guys have, and a couple of things we looked at, and he talked about, and Ryan hit on there's some other plans that are going out there. There's a visitor use management plan and a master plan update for Eldorado, and those are separate, and those are going to be put out for public comment here probably sometime around the first of the year. And the pandemic kind of played havoc with us a little bit, so those have been delayed a little bit, as it's done with a lot of things. So, but those will be coming out, and those will be coming out for public comment and everything on that. And this is a piece of that visitor use management plan to be able to provide that access and be able to make sure that we can allow, like, the residents that live behind there up on Neal Road and stuff, having that separate lane. And we had a meeting with them at Eldorado just to kind of go over the plan also, and then got some comments from them in terms of maybe we could take that lane on the outside and increase that a little bit for that queuing. And I know you guys talked about that a little bit, and their recommendation for that turnaround, that turnaround is actually pretty important for our operations, because when we hit capacity there, and we don't want to queue cars, and if we have to stop cars, they're all backed up, we don't have a good way of turning them around then without running them through the entrance station and doing things. This way, when the park reaches capacity, we can shut that down and we just turn them around, and so they're just going, so we're not queuing those cars, and they're not going back into town. So that's a pretty critical part for us too. And we also have our consultants on from Martin & Martin. Allison is on today, and Mark is on, and we can answer any other questions that you guys might have.
Okay, commissioners, any questions for the applicant at this time?
Commissioner McMillan, just one question. What's the difference in parking spaces, like those that you have now and those that you will have post this renovation?
There's currently 70 spaces, and we're increasing it to 76, and 2 of those are designated for park ranger staff only.
Okay. And can you remind me, or let me know if this is true? I was under the assumption there was some sort of remote parking shuttle service arrangement, and maybe this only happens sometimes, but is there any arrangement for remote shuttle parking to access the park?
We had a shuttle service. We had this summer, we did a shuttle service where people came in from different areas. And John Carson, the park manager up at Eldorado, he can kind of talk a little bit more to that shuttle. You're on mute, John.
You're still on mute.
There you go. There you go. Now you're good.
So I'm the park manager of Eldorado Canyon, and yes, this summer we have had a shuttle service that provided entry into the park. They were brought in from 4 or 5 different shuttle stop locations within the confines of Boulder, and it started in just after 4th of July and ran through the Labor Day holiday, and it was limited to capacity because of the ongoing pandemic, but just under 1,800 visitors had used that service in the time frames that we ran it.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time?
Yeah, a question for John, Commissioner Fitch. So that was 1,800 visitors out of how many visitors per year?
So our current visitation with our numbers from October are just under 470,000.
Wow. That's a lot.
Any other questions? If not, I will move to public comment. Doesn't seem like I have any other ones. So we will go to the public testimony. We'll go through the folks who signed up in advance first. And then if you're on the phone and want to join in, if you're on the phone and want to join in, you can hit, is it 6? Is that right, Rick? To raise, yes.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Blumenfield. Yes, it's *9 to raise your hand.
*9.
Yep.
Thank you. *9 to raise your hand if you're on the phone, and staff will let you in. And we'll take any comments. And if you haven't signed up, at the end of all of that, you'll have the opportunity to, we'll make sure that we get everybody. Just to repeat the public hearing process, you'll have, let's see, please direct your comments to the board. The chair will direct any questions that arise to the appropriate party. Once we've heard all the testimony, the public hearing will be closed. Let's see, making sure that I got all this here. So as we call you, if you're on Zoom and you're signed up to speak, we'll adjust your participant status so that you can speak and be seen via video. If you so choose, once you're finished speaking, Zoom will place you back into the room as an attendee. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes to speak, and a timer will beep at the end of your speaking time. Time can be pooled at 3 minutes per person for a maximum of 10 minutes. You'll need to provide the names and addresses of the other people, up to 3 others beside yourself who are in attendance and donating their time to you. Anyone who's pooling time will need to attend the virtual hearing so that we can verify their presence as we would in an in-person hearing. Please do not submit comments or questions in the chat box during the meeting. Please remain on mute when possible. And members of the public will be unable to share their screens during public comment. And I think that's it. The other thing that I'll say, I know that there are some issues with some power concerns up in Eldorado Springs. So if you do need to call in, if you're listening to this and something happens, the number there is 1-669-254-5252. And the webinar ID is 161-329-9862, and then pound. And that's in the chat as well, in case you didn't have a chance to take that down. Okay, so I think I saw Theodora Barichewski. I hope I got that right.
Good try.
Okay, so you have 3 minutes for your comments.
Okay, thank you. I live at 237 Eldorado Springs Drive, about a quarter of a mile from the entrance to Eldorado Canyon State Park. So every one of the 470,000 visitors goes by my house twice. And I want to tell you, it's a lot of people. My overall concern with this request of the state park is has to do with the larger plans. There, as has been mentioned, there's a use management plan and perhaps also a master plan. There might be 2 different things that are brewing. It's not clear to me if they're 1 or 2 different things, but why in the world they're starting with an entrance booth when they don't have a whole plan done yet is beyond my comprehension. It seems to me that you ought to have the whole plan of how you're gonna address the impacts associated with park visitation rather than taking a piecemeal approach to it. An additional fear that I have is that this ability to turn cars around and deny entrance to the park more easily is only going to increase the number of cars that go by my house 2 times. There are a lot of drawbacks of having all that traffic, not the least of which is there's no sidewalks here, so it's pretty dangerous for a pedestrian to deal with that traffic. So those are my concerns. If you're going to make a plan, make a plan. Don't just piecemeal it out. Makes no sense to me to do that. You might change your mind later with other considerations. And second of all, I'm afraid the plan that they've made to change the entrance is just going to increase the amount of cars that are driving around. So there you have it. Thank you for the time.
Great, thank you for your comments. Next up is Helene Jennings. Do we have Helene Jennings?
Commissioner Bloomfield, this is Anna Milner, staff. I don't see that Ms. Jennings is with us. I do see one phone call-in listener, and I just want to be sure that's not Helene. If it is, could you please press *9 to let us know if you'd like to speak?
Okay, shall we come back to her if need be? Anna?
Sure.
Okay. So Doug Larson, I see you're on the call. If you can unmute yourself and please give your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Doug Larson. I reside at 31 Fowler Lane in Eldorado Springs. I'm also the CEO of Eldorado Artesian Springs, and our company owns the property abutting the state park, and across which park visitors must cross to gain access to the park. On its face, building a new entrance area does not seem too controversial, but I am recommending that you deny approval of this project, and I will tell you why. The issue isn't the building or the entry road design. The issue is the intent is to accommodate additional visitation. This is the 5th redesign of the entry in 40 years of the park. All have the stated goal of reducing impact on the community, while at the same time being designed to accommodate increased traffic and visitation. Park policy is to fill all available parking and then allow vehicles to queue up until space becomes open. It is this queuing of vehicles that creates a traffic backlog through town. Sometimes the queue extends halfway through town. Recently, park officials have been turning around overflow before they enter the park, such as in the new design. This action causes several issues. One, because the park continues to allow visitors to walk into the park. In fact, their design is to try and promote more. The rejected visitors simply park on our company-owned property that's available for our customers and then walk into the park. Two, they drive to the end of the queue and get back in line hoping to get a parking space this time. Or three, they drive out of town. Either way, this causes a circular parade of additional vehicles that, because they are actually not customers of the park, they are technical trespassers, and the park is acting as the attractive nuisance. In May of 2019, a group of over 40 persons representing multiple constituencies of the park was formed to help develop a visitor use management plan. The group also included CPW executives, managers, and park representatives. This organization met several times through the year. The purpose was to provide input for the development of the management plan. This group was not unlike a group that was formed in 1995 to provide the same type of input. Both groups expressed a high priority for establishing a maximum daily visitation capacity. This meant people, not vehicles. But why not also limit the total number of vehicle trips as well? In July of 2018, our company applied for zoning changes to allow us to preserve the Eldorado Springs Resort. As a condition of the approval, we were restricted to our historic capacities, 130 parking spaces and a maximum of 500 daily traffic trips. If the same ratio of trips to parking were applied to the state park, their daily traffic and the impact on the community would be reduced by 50%. Instead, the stated goal on day one of the management plan committee meeting was to, quote, determine the maximum capacity of the park. Notice it did not say the optimal daily limit of park visitation. This total disregard for the community to which their visitors arrive is appalling. And this wanton disregard for Boulder County residents and property owners is precisely why Article 8 of the Boulder County Land Use Code exists. I've provided you a copy by email of the article where I've highlighted nearly 40 statements with which the park does not comply. Many are traffic related. In 1995, park visitation was less than 200,000, and yet that was extreme enough volume to cause the formation of a committee of concerned citizens. Park visitation this year will most likely exceed what we just heard. My studies indicate it's closer to 600,000. The park manager's report just told you that it was the one park that had decreased attendance during the last year. But park officials won't give us an accurate assessment. That'll come out a couple of years from now. Furthermore, the management plan has been delayed. You heard him say not till after the first of the year. It was supposed to be out a few weeks ago. And no doubt it's because this hearing and maybe others were happening. And I have to ask, what is in it that they are hiding? It seems to me that you, as a planning commission, should have this plan before rendering a decision. Also mentioned in Article 8 of the Land Use Code are sanitation facilities. And this was mentioned, and you say it's not within the purview, but if the intent is to attract additional people, which I'm guessing will now grow to close to 1 million people a year, if this all gets approved, because they'll be able to handle them so much more efficiently. The current sanitation facilities are over 20 years old, and they were constructed for a park that had 1/3 the attendance as the park of today. Any passerby or a local resident, when the winds are right or wrong as the case may be, can smell the failure of these restroom facilities. The park attendance should be capped at levels expected when these facilities were built until such time as new sanitation facilities are built that can accommodate today's visitor volume. Furthermore, the expansion of use of the park to current levels and future is a violation of the Boulder County Comprehensive Plan. The comp plan has a specific section devoted to Eldorado Springs. Contained within the text thereof are requirements such as respect and maintain the historic character of the community, solicit community input regarding plans affecting Eldorado Springs, collaborate with State Park to address impacts of the park on the community. This doesn't mean just talk about it, it means actually take care of some of it. Discuss options of safe travel and maintaining the character of the community. And respect the density and scale of the community. The unchecked expansion does not respect scale. I fear it's already too late to meet the intent of the comp plan. Visitation has tripled since this section was added to the plan. In fact, visitation has grown so much that the never-ending traffic to and from the park is the character of the community today. In summary, I have identified poor and illegal vehicle management practices, failure to disclose management plan prior to this hearing, a genuine disregard of the management plan committee mission, using the management plan committee simply as a check mark in the development process, total failure to comply with Article 8 of the Boulder County Land Use Code, failing sanitation facilities, failure to comply with the Boulder County Comprehensive Plan, and the permanent diminishment of community character if left unchecked. For these reasons, this project should be denied until all of the issues are adequately addressed. Thank you.
Figure out how to unmute myself. Thank you for your comments. And next up is Vija. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly. Handley. I think I got that part right. If you could unmute yourself and state your name and address.
Okay, unmute. All right, you got me?
Yes.
All right, Via Handley. I'm from 155 Eldorado Springs Drive, longtime resident. And I want to talk a little bit about the character, and I want to talk about a solution. So the visitors to Eldorado Canyon don't realize this when they come, but Eldorado Canyon is a cul-de-sac. There's one way in and there's one way out. The road is short. It's 9/10 of a mile in the canyon. So they queue up, wait in line of 5 cars now to be 8 cars. They're going to drive 9/10 of a mile at 10 miles per hour, which is going to take 5.5 minutes. Then they will get to the visitor station in the parking lot there, and they will turn around and drive back down that same road and drive out. It's a very short trip. So by adding 3 cars to the queue, you are making the queue longer and you're making the trip much shorter. So they will exit the park after 11 minutes total. So I think the solution for everybody is shuttle only. Shuttle only, no cars. That short ride is a treacherous one. You've got sheer cliffs on one side and you've got a sheer drop off on the other. For the driver, it is not pleasant time. They cannot see what's around them. They miss the whole thing basically. So with a shuttle only, who wins? The park visitors. They can actually sightsee. They can enjoy the drive, and it's safe. The Eldo community gains. We're minus 1,400 plus cars going past their houses every day. The budget gains because we're now building 6 more parking lots at what kind of a cost. We're not paving some of the original road that's there, and there's no point in having a longer queue. The park rangers are going to enjoy this because they can attend to the visitors, to the wildlife. They can answer questions and educate folks, and they don't have to become parking attendants. The wildlife gains. There's less noise, less disruption, better air. Public safety gains. We don't have, for the 1/3 of a mile that in Eldorado Springs that all these folks come through, will not be clogged by the 1,400 cars every day, or by the crazy parking that goes on that Doug referred to. So who loses in this? No one. No one loses.
Thank you for your comments. And it looks like we have a caller with the last 4 digits 1509. If you would like to unmute yourself. Is that *6, Anna?
Yes, that's correct.
So press *6 to unmute yourself and we will hear your comments. Please state your name and address for the record. Again, if you're calling in from phone number ending in 1509, if you can hit *6 to unmute yourself and give your comments. Anna, did you have a name associated with that, or?
Mr. Neil Blank, you should be able to press *6 if you'd like to speak.
Okay, I'm not hearing that. I did want to check back in on Helene Jennings. Has Helene gotten back on the call, or do you have any update there, Anna?
I do not see that Ms. Jennings has rejoined us.
Okay, and not hearing from Neil. Are there any other public commenters? Anybody else that hasn't signed up? Again, if you're on the phone, you can hit *9 to raise your hand to speak. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Anna, is there anything else? Anyone else that we might be missing?
There's currently no additional members of the public signed up in the chat. So I believe one final opportunity for those that'd like to speak, sign up. Mr. Blank, if you're on the phone and you can press *9 or *6, that will let us know you'd like to speak. Other than that, I'm not aware of anyone additional.
Okay, thank you. So giving everyone, I think, ample time to hit *6 or *9 or enter into the chat. We will close public comment. Staff, do you have any comments on either the applicant's presentation or the public comments?
No, staff doesn't.
Okay. Give the applicant an opportunity to reply to any of the public comments. Scott or John?
No, I just, we will have the other, the visitor use management plan that a lot of people are referring to, and the traffic issues and that's coming out in the visitor use management plan on those type of things. That is, the entrance station is a piece of that. And the idea is to try to get better flow through there, keep that queuing down and what they're talking about and try to get those visitors through there. We're not trying to increase capacity. We're trying to control capacity that we have. So John, did you have anything to add?
No, that's correct. We're just trying to control capacity. We're not trying to add more people to the park. And we are, like you said, the entrance station is just one piece of the management strategies that we are trying. And the shuttle, some parking management systems, the improvements to the entrance station, they're all part of strategies that we're going to try.
Okay. Anything else, gentlemen, before we move into questions from the commission? Okay. Commissioners, any questions for staff or the applicants? I think I'll chime in with a question for the applicant. Can you just speak a little bit more? I know there are some concerns about the timing and like why this is moving forward if you haven't finished the comprehensive plan yet. I was wondering if you could just speak to that for a moment.
Yeah, we had started the comprehensive plan quite a while ago, and we put together kind of the task force and everything for the visitor use management plan, which is a piece of the management plan of the Eldorado management plan. The schedule for this entrance station was actually supposed to take place this fall. Was supposed to be being built, and obviously the pandemic and stuff has delayed all those types of things also. So that's it. Those are both kind of together, and those are pieces of it. We're looking at some other things that that are going on, kind of they're outside of like the visitation. It's part of the visitation. It's kind of outside. There's some other factors that are going on that are being looked at that we need to clarify in our plans before we release them. It's really looking at zoning it out and what we do within there. There's not a lot of changes that we're trying to do within the canyon. There's not a lot we can do in the canyon. It's like they said, there's one road in, there's one road up. I mean, we're not adding stuff. We're really looking at what we have there and how we manage what we have. And the big part of that is that visitor use management plan. What can we do with these visitors that are showing up? And, some of the things we've already talked about was like the lot spot. We've got lot spot in up there now. So maybe we can, people will start looking online. They can see what those parking lots are. So we're trying to prevent people from going up there in the first place by giving them a tool to look at and say, okay, yes, that's full. I don't need to drive up there today without going up there, being turned around, coming through the town and trying to reduce that visitation up there. That's the same with the shuttle shuttle too. And when we ran the shuttle, we actually took some of our parking spots out of place. We blocked those off because we're having the shuttle come through and we're bringing the people in. So it's really a balance right now, and we're trying some of those different strategies. And there's some other ones in the visitor use management plan that we're looking at too. So it's kind of where it is. It's complicated, and we've had a lot of moving parts on it. And we were hoping to get it out in November to our commission. And it was actually our commission that decided that we would delay it for probably till January, as we looked at a couple other things that need to be corrected on before we brought it to them too. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from commissioners?
Commissioner McMillan, I have a question for the applicant.
This is Commissioner Neske.
Go ahead, Melanie.
Sorry.
All right.
I just wanted to, I know it was asked earlier, could you just speak a little bit more about the shuttle program and is that something that you intend to expand or handle more traffic? I know it was brought up earlier, but if you could just reiterate that for me.
Yeah, we used it kind of last year as a pilot. I don't know that it was a great pilot because of with the pandemic and stuff, and we had restrictions on how we could do that. But we've looked at trying to expand that. And when we did looked at a lot of the visitation and stuff, it actually showed that a lot of visitation, the 60% was actually coming from the Denver area. So what we're trying to do is expand that and access for people within the Boulder area that may not have transportation to get there too. So it's a different type of access for people to get there, but we're also still staying at that same capacity about how we're running things and taking those other parking spots offline too. And yes, we're looking at trying to do it. There's a cost associated. We worked directly with Boulder County on that last year, and that worked really well for what we tried to do. And that's in play for this year, as far as I know too. Is that correct, John?
That is correct. Yes.
Gavin, did you have a question?
Yeah, just one sort of functionality question. There's no parking before you get into the park, right? That's what it seems that to me, that part of the reasons everyone is queued up is because they have to wait in line to get through and then get into the park. And maybe I'm simplifying this, but was there any thought given to perhaps having a little parking before for those folks that maybe want to then park, pay their fees on foot and walk into the park, or do you have to have all the parking after the entrance?
John, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So as Doug had mentioned, he is the owner of the roadway through town. And so that is private property. And so there are no public parking spots available for users to legally park and enter the park. And that's so part of the reason why we went with the shuttle service was to try to reduce the amount of people attempting to get into the park on foot and give them another option and another avenue to access the park without going through town and becoming an issue with parking on someone else's private property.
Okay, so there's no way, like, I guess the thing I'm thinking of, and again, I do understand what you're saying, would be, could you not just shift the entrance gate a little bit further up the canyon so that some of the parking was accessed on state property before you went through the visitor gate?
So you mean move the entrance station up the canyon further?
Yeah. I understand this is a big change from what you proposed. I'm not trying to design on the fly here. I'm just wondering if that is even possible. Yeah, if you were to move the entrance gate up the canyon further, could you then implement some parking on state-owned property before you have to get to the gate? Does that make sense? Sorry.
Yeah, there are definitely restrictions just because of the geology of the area and the availability of any other space for parking vehicles.
Yeah.
If we move the entrance station back up the canyon, then you would still run into pretty much the same limitations because you have people coming down the roadway that are looking to get in, and with limited number of parking spaces, the problem would still exist. Part of our goal with the lot spot parking management system is to give people an opportunity to look ahead of time before they come down the road to see if there are parking spaces available, and hopefully change that behavior and allow people to look ahead and see that there are no spaces or there are spaces, and then hopefully change that behavior and reduce the volume of traffic coming into town before they get to the park.
Yeah, that's all great stuff. I think what a lot of people do is, they wait in that line, they pay the fee, and then they park, 20 feet from where they paid the fee. And so the reason I ask the question is, if you get those people out of waiting in line, if they're just going to park there and they're not going to drive all the way through, it may help with the queuing. I'm not going to try to figure that out in this meeting tonight. I just throw it out as a suggestion for you all to think about. A question, actually.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, Gavin, I think the only way that you make progress there is by the state or the county having a parking lot that's prior to actually entering into the town. But I don't know what the zoning, or whether that's open space. There are lots that are further back up Eldorado Springs Drive, but it's not going to be easy to figure out some way to either tell people not to come or to provide a turnaround. But if you're trying to provide parking before they get to the Eldorado Artesian property, it's got to be before you get into town. Hard.
Agreed.
Excuse me, Commissioner Bloomfield, this is Rick Hackett, staff. We may have had some technical issues with a caller, Neil Blank, who's still on the line and has his hand raised. I wanted to see, Commissioner Bloomfield, if you wanted to reopen public testimony for Mr. Blank, if he is able to connect now.
Okay, yeah, we'll go ahead and reopen public comment because of the technical issues. Mr. Blank, if you can hit *6, you should be able to unmute yourself and give your testimony. You'll have 3 minutes, and please state your full name and address for the record. And it seems like we're still having some technical difficulties.
This is Anna Milner, staff. Mr. Blank, I'm going to press the ask to unmute button, and you should receive a vocal message saying to unmute, and then you'll press *6, and that should unmute you. So hold one moment. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, we can.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for bearing with me. I could not unmute my line. Apparently it's muted on the Zoom side or something, which you undid. Anyway, my name is Neil Blank. I live at 850 Neil Road in Eldorado Springs. I live beyond the state park, so one of the people that has to drive through the state park to access their home. I've lived in Eldorado Springs since the mid-'80s and above the park for 20 plus years. I'm pretty familiar with the park, the traffic, the flows of traffic, and kind of know what to expect. And over the last couple of years, I have made it my biggest effort to just avoid driving through the park. It is a mess. It is just a mess of congestion and mismanagement, and I kind of upset that, well, I guess other members have called in and stated that, approving this park entrance now would be approving one piece of a larger puzzle before we know the other puzzle pieces. We have the Visitor User Management Group, which I'm our community representative for the State Park Visitor Management Plan Group, and I've brought up my concerns in that forum many times. I brought up my concerns directly to John. I brought them up in the hearing the community meeting that Scott Roush mentioned earlier, and I don't really see anyone paying any attention to our comments. They seem to just roll right on with their plan, and it's disappointing. We've been making these points for years now. We started before, but officially in the West TSA meetings from 2013. The most common response during that entire set of meetings was traffic congestion, parking, and emergency access were the biggest concerns. We've communicated this in writing. We've communicated it verbally in meetings directly with Elise Jones, in the mountain bike meetings, in the vote meetings. It just falls on deaf ears. None of the plans that the park is communicating are really going to do anything about that turning around of cars that have to drive through Eldorado Springs twice, coming and going. And I'm really glad to hear that you guys have flagged the concern that the lanes need to be longer to give adequate access for queuing and for community members. But I think, as Mr. Larson and some other people commented, it's just the visitation is through the roof. I mean, it is just crazy. And it's not so much the numbers of people as the frequency of days that the park is at or near capacity. It used to be we could be patient during the summer and long weekends, holiday weekends, and just kind of enjoy the park and all the visitors and all the commotion. And now it's every day. Tuesday at 5:30 at night, and you're waiting in line, and it's just absurd. I can't get UPS packages delivered anymore. I run a business from my home and have for almost 20 years. I can barely do that anymore because of the traffic. So I think you should put this on hold until the other community studies, plans come together and we have a consolidated view of traffic and issues in the Eldorado Springs area.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
With that, we will reclose the public hearing. And I'd like to give staff an opportunity to respond if they wish.
Staff has no comment. No further.
Okay. And the applicant, any response to the public comment?
Just that we feel that we were addressing some of their needs and what they've talked about, and we added the extra lane to be able to get those vehicles through. And we have people that are buying passes, and if they live behind there, they can use that second lane to be able to access into the park and get through there. That was in there specifically. That was one of the main reasons for that, and emergency access. And then also listening to their concerns, if we can be able to widen that lane on that outside there to be able to increase that queuing, we're actually looking at that as part of the plan too, if that's a possibility, to be able to allow more cars to queue and then be able to get around to the outside of them to have people pass through.
Thank you. Okay, so commissioners, we're up for any other questions to staff or the applicant. If not, we will move to discussion. Who's got some discussion? I can go first if you're going to make me. I mean, I certainly hear a lot of the sort of the pain from the folks that live, the residents of Eldorado Springs. It sounds like this amazing natural resource causes them quite a bit of challenges, both in terms of, not both, but in terms of safety, in terms of, just convenience, or rather inconvenience. And it certainly seems like a challenge of how do we balance the use of this natural resource with the needs of the residents that are really impacted by it. My feeling is that is a much larger process, and that, you know, what we have before us here, and the purview of this commission, unfortunately doesn't involve a lot of that process. It sounds like Colorado Parks and Wildlife is engaging, and I would certainly encourage them to really look at the impacts of the park on the residents themselves and the historic nature. It does really seem to me like there's a lot of damage being done there, and it's certainly not an easy thing. It certainly seems like really improving the shuttle use and having more communication down canyon when the lot is full is something that could really help that. But again, that is outside of what we have in front of us today. I also hear the complaints of like, wait, why are we doing this if we don't have a full plan in effect? And Scott, I think your point is well taken, that there's not a lot that can be done in the park. It's a very narrow area. The geography does not allow for, a lot of expansion. It sounds like this is kind of doing the best that you can with the park itself. And then the concerns of the dramatically increased number of users is going to have to come with sort of a demand side management, if you will, and managing the traffic rather than something that you would do in the park. So with all of that, I would be in favor of moving forward with an approval. I would certainly encourage Colorado Parks and Wildlife to, make that queue as long as possible. And, maybe start even implementing at least some preliminary measures to decrease the traffic up the canyon when there's no room, even before the full public process is borne out, just as a mitigating measure. But those are my comments. Anyone else?
Commissioner Fitch, I would second those comments. I think there are big problems there. I do think, again, the other resource, not just the canyon itself, but is the park area at the top of the canyon. And it's important to preserve that, because it is, in my experience, it's a resource for people probably more from the Denver area, but well used, at least during the summer months when I've been there. So I would like to preserve that, but I think the proposal before us makes some marginal improvement in the way that traffic flows now. I don't know why the station itself has to be replaced, but that's not part of the consideration for location and extent. So with the space that is available at the entrance, it seems like to me it's a reasonable proposal, and denying it will just keep the queues at the current length. So I would make a motion to go ahead if anybody wants to second that.
This is Commissioner McMillan. I'd like to just make a couple comments before we get to a motion. Because I agree, I agree with what both Commissioner Fish and Commissioner Bloomfield said. This is probably going to make things better than the current situation, but it's just really not a sustainable long-term solution for the issues that we see up there. I think it's temporary. I think that, you know, visitation is going to increase even after you implement this. And I'm just concerned that we're going to find ourselves in the same spot we are now in the very near future, with queuing still being a problem, even though we've made it better now. There's going to be more people coming, and we're not addressing that issue really. And I understand that's sort of outside of the purview of this conversation. Like I said, I think this is a fine solution for making the current situation better. But ultimately, I just think for the residents of Eldorado and for the community at large, we just need to find a better solution for accessing the park. And to me, it just sounds like it needs to be remote parking and a lot more shuttle use. And I hope that's a very key focus of your management plan that you're studying right now. You see it in Zion at the national park level, where there's no cars inside, and it seems to work out just fine there. And this area is a lot smaller. I just feel like that's really where this needs to head. And that's an editorial comment, somewhat off topic, but I do think it relates to what we're talking about here. And I hope that that's what we're looking at in the future. But ultimately, as far as it pertains to this application, like I said, I do believe it's an improvement, and I would be open to a motion for approval this evening.
This is, yeah, Commissioner Hilton. So I think generally this advances our comp plan goals, though it certainly doesn't solve all the major issues here. The disturbed or developed area is essentially unchanged. So I think that, you know, despite all of the sensitivity around the area, it seems like a net improvement. The fast lane for residents and buses seems like a significant improvement for local residents, including by decreasing the queuing time and any related air quality and congestion that causes, as well as helping emergency access. So it's hard for me to imagine that those pieces would be anything but an improvement. So I'm generally supportive of moving forward.
This is Commissioner Neske. I wanted to echo those comments as well. I think that makes a really good point on the major issue being the canyon. So if there's any way that we can reduce that with shuttles or advanced noticing, I think that's the major issue with the public comments that we're hearing, is that the amount of car traffic. And I certainly agree with the improvements in the turnaround lanes. But of course, the double-edged sword of that being more cars coming in and turning around. So I do hear that. But I do support the proposal of improving the turnaround for improving the access in that area to get people flowing more quickly.
Okay, any other comments, discussion, or maybe a motion?
Commissioner Fitch, move that the Planning Commission approve and forward to the County Commissioner's docket LE 20003 Eldorado State Park entrance improvements with the conditions of approval as recommended by staff.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Hilton?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, then any other discussion before we take a vote? Okay, then I will. So we'll do a roll call vote, just in order that you're appearing on my screen. So Commissioner Fitch?
Yes.
Commissioner Bloomfield, aye. Commissioner Neske?
Aye.
Commissioner McMillan?
Aye.
And Commissioner Hilton?
Aye.
Okay, looks like it passes unanimously. And thank you for everyone's time, for the applicant and staff. And thank you for staff's help with this Zoom call and this meeting and all of the public comment. We appreciate all of you all staying on the line and giving your comments. And do I have a motion to adjourn since we don't have any more docket items?
Yes. So moved.
Okay, so moved. So I will adjourn. I don't have a gavel, but meeting is adjourned. Y'all have a good night.
Thanks,
you too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, planning commissioners.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Great job.